Okay, good afternoon everybody. I hope you've all got your papers. The agenda is in front of me and we'll start off with welcome, introductions and apologies. I'd like to welcome all members and officers to today's Cleaner Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Just to confirm, as a council, we welcome the use of the Welsh language within our public meetings. I have not received notice that members or invited attendees want to use Welsh today. Therefore, the meeting will be conducted in English only. May I remind you that this meeting is being webcast. Therefore, can I ask that you turn off, silence your mobile phones and ensure you speak clearly into your microphones. Can I just remind everyone to come through the chair even when we get excited and want to ask supplementary questions, because otherwise we'll have silences on the webcam. So that's to benefit the public. For your information, there are no planned fire drills today, but in case of a fire alarm sounding, please follow the signs to exit the building. I'm pretty sure we're all familiar with that. Can I also remind all members to sign the attendance register and confirm if any apologies have been received for this meeting? That's the first item of the agenda. We'll move on to the second item. Declarations of interest. I've already spoken to Tim about this, but could I ask if any members should have any declaration of interest, that they declare them now, and Tim is here from legal to give any advice if required. Are there any declarations of interest? No? Tim, I think we can excuse you now. Thank you for coming along. Okay, we'll move on to the... did I deal with apologies?
You didn't ask for them, Richard.
I do. Let's just go back. I didn't ask for the apologies. Can we just give the apologies?
We've had apologies from Councillor Giles Davis and Gwyn Smith. Okay,
that was my oversight, just recognising those apologies. Okay, if we move on to item 3 on the agenda, minutes of the meeting held on the 29th of March 2018. Please could I ask members to scan through the minutes for accuracy and confirm that the minutes are an accurate account of the meeting. Moved. Seconded? Yeah. Okay. We're getting through this fairly quickly. This is good. Okay, we'll move on to the action sheet. Please could Rachel update members on any actions outstanding?
Okay, the action sheet's for noting there's only one outstanding action which I'm liaising with the officer to get the answer for you.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on to the next item of the agenda, which is assisting and driving both employment opportunities and new businesses into Torfaen. I'd like to welcome the officers, and we've got, I'm not sure who's who, and obviously I know that Karen Padfield is the head of skills and employability. I believe this is Dawson Evans, the group leader, economy, culture and regeneration. One of you two is David Leach is the North Torfaen Regeneration Programme Manager, and Garrett Joyne is the Group Leader Economy and Digital Enterprise. I'd like to thank the officers for the paper, and could I invite the officers to give us a brief overview of the main points within the report, please?
Well, if I start, because Skills and Employability has recently joined Neighbourhood Services and Planning and Public Protection following the small reorganisation and the arrangements that were Community Services Unit. So all of Skills and Employability that was in Community Services Unit has moved into Neighbourhood Services and Planning and Public Protection quite recently. We were already working very closely with colleagues, but I think what this is in Neighbourhood Services, so what I think this has done is given us an added opportunity to bring some of the work supporting businesses and supporting individuals with employment closer together. So I think the report itself, there were quite a lot of points that we were all collaborating on to answer the questions that came through, some of which relate very much into my world and some into Dawson's and colleagues' world. So I just wanted to make the point at the beginning of this that I think it's been a very positive move within the Council, bringing skills and employability closer together with our economy and enterprise colleagues. In relation to the report itself, I think it is quite a long report. There were quite a lot of points in that we needed to cover. So it's probably best, I think, rather than if I go through, that actually if members have got questions, because it's quite likely that individual parts of the report will need to be responded to by the range of officers that are here.
Thank you for that, Karen. We had a pre-scrutiny meeting on Monday. We've got a list of questions, and this isn't, I know not all members were at the pre-scrutiny, so we're not trying to preclude members who weren't here on Monday asking questions. We've grouped our questions under a number of themes. I'll just quickly mention the themes, but when we go into detail, we're going to start off asking questions around the economic climate. Then we're going to chat about skills and employability. Then we're going to talk about the impact of zero tolls on the Severn Bridge. We then want some information around the Valleys Task Force. Then we're going to chat around research and marketing, and that's going to include stuff around the support we give to small businesses. We're going to have a few questions around stakeholder group, and there's a little question at the end around the British. So that's the general thrust of what we're going to ask you today. So we'll kick off with economic climate. Can I ask Norma to ask the first question, please?
Yes, Chair. Thank you. What differences have you encountered since the last report in November 2014, and how have you worked differently to accommodate them?
The main thing that came out of the last scrutiny that we went through when we were asked about return on investment was the recommendation made by the committee around joint working, about making sure that all the assets, and by assets I mean staff, are coordinated so that we are aiming to make the local economy more buoyant. There's been big changes in the national economy since the last report. We don't know the full effect of Brexit yet, although everything seems to have been a positive impact on the economy, which has filtered down to locally. If you have a look at the stats that we've quoted in the report, they're all going the right way. There has been some real big success stories within Torvine of companies increasing exports, companies research and development and things, but there is an underlying trend that there is still issues about. There is still a lot of poverty within the borough that needs to be addressed. So we are looking at, one of the things we're looking at is combining the skills together with the business support to make sure that we are addressing those problems. There are some worrying signs in the national economy at the moment that start to pick up. One of the things I always look at is new car sales, because it is one of the early indicators of changes in the economy. And if you look at it, new car sales at the moment are dropping, they're falling like a stone. There's been an announcement by Jaguar that 1,000 jobs they were looking to create may go to China. There's the issues down at the Ford factory, and Vauxhall announcing that they're cutting the number of dealerships as well. So although there's a very strong picture of the economy, there are underlying trends that look like there could be some stormy times ahead. But as I say, with regards to Brexit, because nobody has ever gone through anything like it before, we really don't know how it's going to affect our economy. I say at the moment it's been positive, but there are some signs with some negativity starting to come in.
Thank you, Chair. Could I ask just a supplementary there? Thank you for that, Dawson. I was particularly interested to hear you say about the poverty aspect, and you're going to do something about that. What have you got in mind to try to alleviate that problem?
One of the things that we have at the moment is the announcement by the Valleys Task Force about the strategic hub in the south of the borough. And one of the things that we have to do is make sure that that has a full effect right across the borough. Cwmbran has traditionally been an employment centre for the whole of the borough. If you look at it, a lot of people live in the north and work in the south. We have to make sure that the infrastructure, etc., and the skills are there for that to continue to happen. So, although there seems to be an emphasis possibly on Cwmbran, if you were looking at it from the north, it is for the benefit of everyone, and we have to make sure that that benefit comes through, and we have to make sure that any business opportunities that come out of that really looks at supporting the foundation economy, the local services that are able to be provided and the opportunities that come through that. So that's stuff that we will be looking at whenever we're looking at any regeneration programmes. One of the things that the council did very wisely, in my opinion, was to put economic development and regeneration together, because in the past we have worked at tangents, but now it's not just about creating a Medi Park, it's not just about creating a brand new shop in Pontypool, it's about what are we going to do about end uses, what is the best end use for that, and how can we bring that about. So that's the kind of stuff that we're looking at.
Yes, just to say, in relation to the economic climate from the time which you spoke about, one of the things that we can see when we look at economic differences is we still have some people who are economically inactive. Employment rates might rise. The employment rates are high at the moment. There are a small number of people who are actually registered as unemployed, but we know that we've got some issues around economic inactivity within Torfaen and wider across the region. So I think the importance for us in when we're designing services, whilst we use lots of different funding streams, but we've mentioned the Brexit word already, mainly European funding, which is funding the services that we provide in my team. So there are impacts that potentially will come through. We don't really know, and I don't want to necessarily rehearse all of those. We believe there will be a UK Shared Prosperity Fund that we will be able to tap into in some way, shape or form. But I think the issues for us as a council are to make sure that when we're looking at our vulnerable people, that we are providing or designing things that are going to help people to move in their journey from wherever point they are now to enable them to benefit from economic upturns, but also protect them when there are economic downturns. Whatever money we may be trying to secure to do it, and whatever strings may be attached to it. So I think it's that forward planning. And in changes in the economic climate, as I say, we know that a small change in the economic climate can have a big effect on some number of individuals, because within the workforce we also know that there are some jobs that are highly vulnerable. So there are jobs which are 0 hours, there are jobs which are very part-time, and there are some individuals who will be more vulnerable than others to small changes in the climate. So it's planning for that we're trying to use our best crystal ball to gaze into and see what's going to be happening after Brexit.
Alan, what did you
I was just going to add to Karen, sorry Alan, there's a big drive towards automation with everything we do, and there is a downside to automation, and that is it will cut jobs. So we need to be, it's very difficult because we don't have the crystal ball as to what's going to be automated and when, but the kind of jobs, repetitive production jobs, are certainly going to be automated, and some of our economy is based on those kind of jobs. So we do need to be careful with what we're doing, and we do need, and that's where economic development and skills together is important, because we can look at and try and bring the skills forward that we think will be required in the future.
Okay. Alan?
Thank you both for that, by the way.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm a little worried, actually, reading the full report, that in the report I can see a measure of all the training that we are doing and all the support we're giving in terms of skills. I can't see what those skills are, but I take it they come out of the annual audit, skills audit. So, but apart from that, we're training quite a number of people. What I'm worried about is the lack of measure of the number of jobs that we create and the number of people we bring in. Some will come in because they want to come in, others because we've drawn them in. I can't see the numbers on there. But I say it because if you look at the actual ratio to total jobs versus the working population between 16 and 64, Torfaen has got a lower density than Wales and also the UK. We are 0.68 as a ratio, Wales is 0.76, and the UK is 0.84. Now that's one worry that we're down there. But the other one is that we've declined every year since 2013 in terms of that ratio, whilst Wales and the UK has increased. And 14 out of the 22 authorities do better than we do on that. But I'm just worried I can't put a handle on what we do actually create in terms of the input that we put into this.
I'll just come in before the officers answer. The next questions, which what are the current and future? What are the challenges current and future, and how may it be overcome? I think Alan's highlighted one of the challenges there.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry, Chair, I just want to finish. And I'm worried in light of the amount of funding from various sources that has disappeared and probably will disappear, or we'll have a great deal of uncertainty, plus the point that was just made by Dawson in relation to, inactivity through the use of digital technology in the future and the transformation that's coming with that.
You want to do
Yeah, very much so. You made the point about, sorry, thank you very much for that, made the point about spreading the thing around the borough. We've got the point about the Valleys Hub and Cwmbran, and I think Alan's making the point about the type of jobs that we're having. There is the question, obviously, Cwmbran has a lot of those skilled jobs. It goes with Newport, we've got the new hospital hub down there. And I looked at the page 38 here, we're looking at the number of enterprises. I want some idea of the type of enterprises that we're attracting, obviously big, small ones, etc. And the number of enterprises, because I hazard a guess, having talked to Dawson in this meeting before, that I suspect a large number of them are sat in Cwmbran, and then it proportionally goes up the valley. Now, it's not to say we shouldn't encourage them, it's about the type of jobs. It's sort of following on from what Alan suggests, type of jobs, the quality of jobs, and, the training. And it's very pertinent what you're saying about that, because I've known you for a long time, Karen, I know what you get up to in this game, but, and upskilling people, it's been what you've done in your department, and Dawson's been about attracting businesses, and it's those two things. Where are we attracting and what's the quality of the jobs? And obviously it's a spread of jobs to suit the people here.
I'll let the officers. Do you turn your mic off?
Yeah.
If I can perhaps start, and obviously Dawson will pick up. I think, yes, there are some very valid points there, and I think possibly also there is some exploration of the data as to some of the limitations maybe. So, yes, Dawson's already mentioned there are more employment opportunities within the Cwmbran area, within Torfaen, but we're also very aware there are a lot of people who will live in Torfaen but actually work elsewhere, and that potentially could be impacting on some of that data. Within the mentioning that you made, Councillor Ashley, there about the quality of jobs, that is very important. Recent research talks a lot, and I'm sure some of you have seen it, about the incidence of in-work poverty. So whereas many years ago we would have been highly focused on getting people into work, and we're still focused on getting people into work, what research shows, if individuals are in what is low-paid, vulnerable work, that actually often they don't progress in work because of that, and they can be stuck in a situation. And as we all know, we are experiencing more in-work poverty than perhaps was identified some years ago. The opportunities to identify high-quality jobs to come into the area, and the opportunities to forward plan in knowing if things are coming through, what are the qualifications, what are the skills that are needed for those high-quality jobs. Because in some instances, on the type of services that we provide, we may be saying as a council, well, actually, it's not our services. A lot of the upskilling we do through, for example, Inspire to Work, Bridges into Work, Communities for Work, may be at that lower level with people who have got little or no qualifications, and we are funded to take them to a certain level. We do need to be engaging more broadly with the FE sector and the HE sector. We do need to have a more coherent approach, I believe, with all training providers. I mean, Torfaen, as you know, as a council, has Torfaen training as training provider within it, but ensuring that we take advantage of working closely in partnership. I mean, partnership is absolutely vital, because we as a council might not be able to deliver those higher quality qualifications, but what we need for our residents is to ensure there's access to them so they can benefit from high quality jobs coming in. And it's not a case of whether that job comes into Newport, Cardiff or Torfaen. It's not that actually highly skilled people from elsewhere might be moving in, it's actually that we're growing our own. So I don't have a solution necessarily, but I do think it's a very, very valid point. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I picked up on a couple of points there. Before I get into a specific supplementary on the economic climate, in the report you mention, this is a generic point that covers all of the themes that have been identified actually. Torfaen Economy and Enterprise Strategy was adopted in 2013, guides the Council's economic development work. So my first question is, does that need a new strategy document being put in place, given that that is 5 years old and an awful lot has happened in the last 5 years with regards to Cardiff Regional City deal, acquisition of the British, we've got the developments going on in Llanfrecford Grange Hospital and the Medipark and so on. So the first question is, should there be a new strategic document put in place? And a lot of things have moved on externally as well. We touched on Brexit. I would have thought that there could have been some work being undertaken by the council to look at the impact of a no-deal scenario, or the type of deal that we might end up with in terms of the impact that that's going to have on importing and exporting businesses within the borough, especially if we're going to have to start having we're not in the customs union. So I would have thought there could have been some preparatory work on that for the economic climate. And the other thing, you've touched briefly on this AI, robotics, this so-called next industrial revolution, if you like, that's going to be coming in. There was a report published recently within the last couple of weeks that says as many as 1 in 3, or in some parts of Wales, 1 in 4 jobs could be at risk of going because of the type of automation that would be coming in. And I wondered if more can be done in consultation with local employers to see the types of areas that could be affected by this. There was something on I think it was on the BBC Click programme recently, and we tend to think it's all the repetitive tasks over and over again that will be replaced by these robotics. But there was an example on there that they had the robots to put together an IKEA chair, and they could put the screw in and assemble a chair with screws, but they're not sophisticated enough to assemble a chair that actually required nuts and bolts. So you might think that there's certain areas of the technology, certain areas of the jobs that will be replaced by robots. In fact, the technology is actually not there yet for them to be able to come in and do that. So there's a number of things. The first one was a general thing, and then the rest is on the economic climate.
Yeah, can I, before you answer, Hugh's touched on one of the questions that we're going to ask, was what impacts of the potential for Brexit had in this area so far. So if you could pick that up as well as you've raised it, Hugh, that'll get that question out of the way, please.
Well, if I start and then I'll hand over to Dawson. I think the short answer in relation to the strategy is yes, it probably is worth us considering refining, reviewing, given that it was 2013, and I think, although I wasn't, is it a 7-year, is it due to run out about 2019, 2020? 2020. So I think it's probably very timely to actually consider reviewing that, and particularly in the light of some of the things you mentioned, the changes. I mean, Cardiff Capital Region and the Associated City deal, Valleys Task Force, also Welsh Government have recently launched their employability plan. Welsh Government are now procuring in a different way for some of the support that they have been provided. So I think the answer to that is yes, it's a timely time to look at possibly that. In relation to the impacts of Brexit, there may be research being undertaken within our financial sector, within the council, on that subject that you raised, which is about import and export. I don't know, so I'll hand over as to Dawson in case he's aware of anything. What I am aware of is that certainly there has been we've inserted the impact of Brexit into the medium-term financial planning in recognition of the work that we do on employability and skills, because there will be an impact there. So we've inserted it as a risk in light of the impact it may have the council on the number of staff that are supported by it, potential, hopefully not, coming to fruition redundancy costs, and hopefully our need to be alert to all the fora that we need to be to find out what is coming with the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, or what does Cardiff Capital Region bring. So if officers, for example, are engaged in all the task and finish groups to which it's appropriate, so that we are best positioned to take advantage of what might come through Cardiff Capital Region or other places. So I think it's, you obviously watch and look at different news programmes on Brexit, and I think, yes, there are many people saying there are a lot of questions and very few answers, but I think we just need to be in those conversations, and that's what we're trying to do with current capacity. So in relation to the other points, export and customs isn't my bag, so I'm going to hand over and see if anybody else.
pick up on a few of the points. The Economic Development Strategy, Torfaen Economy and Enterprise Strategy, is a document from 2013 to 2020, is reviewed on a 12-monthly basis. So the kind of stuff that you've alluded to there is looked at. The honest answer is, it is on its line. It does need a refresh, right? But it's only 2 years away, and we're aware of the issues with it. As I say, it is reviewed. So we would be thinking about replacing it in the next 12 months anyway, doing the preparatory work for that. So I think that's a valid point, and something we will take on board. With regards to Brexit and one of the effects it has had on my part of the world is that a lot of our staff were employed via ERDF schemes. None of them have been replaced, right? And I'd like to point out that when I joined Economic Development in 2002, there were 9 of us. There's only 2 of us now. All right. So there's those kind of effects it's had on us. We haven't had a business grant to give anybody since 2015 because the ERDF funding of the South East Wales Local Investment Fund ran out, which was one of our big drivers for creating jobs within the borough. Right. So that Brexit has had an adverse effect on the economic development team within Torfaen. There's no doubt about that. And it's an interesting thing to look at putting that report together for the amount of resource that actually delivers those programmes and the questions we're being asked now. Because, as I say, there has been that drop in staff and we've been hit with more budget cuts this year. Right? So it will need another structure put around delivery of the points that you're making. All right. So where's everything we are? I feel, and it goes back to I can't remember the gentleman's name now. Right. Point earlier on about things slipping back. It could be a result of the fact we don't have that many people on the ground that we used to have. All right. So and that could and that's why it was interesting in listening to your comment. You know, so these things are happening, and austerity is having a big effect on economic development within Torfaen. There's no doubt about that.
Okay, in just a sec.
Thank you very much.
Dawson, you've answered. I think you've answered this question, but I'll just read it out. What has been the impact of losing the local investment fund on new businesses? You can touch on that in a minute, but Stuart, do you want to just come in?
Mine's very similar because it just struck me listening to Hugh, listening to well-being of future generations, Dawson. It banged me straight in the head thinking about it, because if we haven't got investment, austerity, the whole lot, it impinges on the well-being of future generation. Now, I imagine you're frustrated by that one as well, by the sound of it.
Well-being of Future Generation Act was something I believe was long overdue, and I think it's a cracking piece of legislation. All right, and I'm not knocking that, but it was put in place by Welsh Government for local authorities to deliver, with the money taken away, and that's what's causing the conflict on it. It's not to say that we won't work with it. It's not to say that we are not preparing ourselves to work in a different way, because we have to, because of the number of people that we have. We have to work differently, which has been the great bit about putting this report together and looking at how we're pulling in resources from all different parts of the council to actually focus on this. But as you know, as has been pointed out, we're not going to get all of it. And there are going to be blips in some of the figures, and we're not going to compare to other local authorities, because other local authorities have different economies to us and different sized teams, and also grant funding to help their businesses, which we don't have. We've got the small business loan that we work with Credit Union on, all right, but I mean that's particularly geared at startups.
So, only reason I bring it in because on the economic front, which it does have some directions, obviously if you can put the economics right, you give the well-being bit of it. It does strike me that we have to use it to make some direction of policy, don't we?
I totally agree.
Councillor Thompson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's just a quick question, really, just so I can be clear. So, obviously, we've got a Brexit and the funding and all the rest of it. Is there no contingency plans if we're losing funding, if we're not having any funding, or funding is being taken away from us because of Brexit and the EU and all the rest of that lovely stuff? Do we have no contingency plans at all then?
I think the main contingency plan is Cardiff City deal. That's where the next lot of funding is. Now, what's happened at the moment is we are not clear. I'm not able to give you what business support, what economic development will look like through that city deal process because it's not there yet. Now, I work on the business support task and finish group, and there's been a lot of work done on that, and that paper is actually sat down at City Deal at the moment, and we're waiting for the direction on that, but we haven't had that yet. That's the new game in town. So until that is clarified, it's very difficult for me to sit in front of you, Councillor, and say to you, we're definitely going to do A, B and C, because we don't know. And that is the truth.
Okay. Karen, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, and specifically in relation to the provisions within skills and employability and the number of staff that are currently funded through European structural funds, that is the contingency that is always being identified as a risk in the medium-term financial planning. Okay, so there is that is within the council's going forward planning to look at. There's not a solution at the moment, but it's identified as a risk within there. I would agree. Yes, Cardiff City region, Cardiff City deal is the way going forward. Clearly, it's still fairly new. There is a Skills for the Future proposal, which is quite a large encompassing proposal, which is at OBC, outline business case stage at the moment. I think the link is in the paper and it's available publicly on their website. In relation to the city deal and the city region, yes, there are, as Dawson mentioned, the task and finish group that he sits on. I support Richard Crook from Blaenau Gwent, who is the officer who's leading on the employability and the skills strand of it. So I'm engaged in that task and finish group. So as I mentioned earlier, we've got officers that are engaged in as many task and finish groups within Cardiff region, so that hopefully Torvine's voice is being well heard within that, because the purpose of the city region and the city deal is to benefit the whole of the region, and that is writ large in that. So I mean, the leader obviously attends and sits on the appropriate group, as does the chief executive. There are thematic leads from different local authorities. So Councillor Debbie Wilcox from Newport, she is the leader who is leading on skills and employability. So there are good linkages through that. I think the process going through, when proposals come through, there's a quality assurance framework that they need to go through before they come to different levels of assurance. So, for example, there is a programme board which Rachel Jowett, our Chief Officer, sits on. So the communication goes through various levels so that things eventually, when they do come to the leaders and ultimately for approval, hopefully they've been tested well through various different channels. Frameworks.
Stuart.
Next question, have you got a link into PSB with this as well?
Yes.
Yes, me too.
Next question, how much?
Quite a lot is the honest answer to that. There's, it's a strange, the economy has come out strong in the work that the PSB has already completed. Once again, based on well-being of future generations. The economy is vital for the well-being of future generations, and that's what's been shown in the consultation papers that the PSB have gone through already.
Okay. Karen.
If I can just add to that, I think the importance of employment as a health outcome is now being more recognised, and the fact that those of us who are in work you know, it is good for our health. We might not always feel it on a Monday morning, but, you know, it is. So I think it's really useful being involved. I'm on the PSB, the Officer Support Group, and so the sort of issues around looking at young people who might be at risk of disengaging, look at trying to prevent young people becoming NEET. Obviously, Torvine's got a good track record on that. That's being fed through to the adult framework of employability. So yes, the PSB is well connected with that.
I think your comments has brought us on to the next theme, skills and employability. I've particularly got an interest in universal credit. So do you want to ask that question, Emma, please?
Thank you. Since the introduction of universal credit, has there been an increase in people engaging with programmes that can help them into work?
It's difficult to say whether the introduction of universal credit has had the direct impact in that way, because for the sort of employability programmes that we run, it is generally for people who are at a distance. So European money isn't put to help people who would get their own job in their own time. It's for people who are at a distance. So to engage people, we do assertive outreach. We go out and find them, do a lot of marketing. I think what we've seen with universal credit are a number of things, and I would like to say that I think our council, and particularly our officers in Revs and Bens, have been very proactive in helping to use the data to identify families who in households that may be at risk when universal credit first started, because of course we had a rollout here before full rollout nationally. So we saw impacts of financial hardship coming through, some of which obviously DWP, I don't want to rehearse all the things DWP did, but they changed some of the processes to make things easier. So I think the council through Revs and Bens has been very, very on the ball with that. We've certainly had some issues picking up your point earlier about data. Of course, we used to use the data beforehand of what benefit people were on to identify, for example, whether we were improving situation for young people who were on job seekers allowance. And of course then we got to a point where yes, the numbers on young people on job seeker allowance was falling like a stone, and that's because all the new claims were going on universal credit and it didn't come up in the data. So we have to be careful about how we use the data sometimes. DWP did rectify that, and we had something called claimant count, so we can look and try and measure the impact of the things that we're doing. That again has seen a difference with full rollout, where actually the claimant count data is not now as robust and reliable. So I think there have been a number of things from universal credit that have come through. One is people have experienced hardship due to the change. DWP have made some changes, but the council has been proactive in identifying and working with partners such as Bronavon and Mellin to start to talk to people about what might be happening as a result of universal credit and obviously the welfare cap. We liaise closely with Revs and Bens, obviously with appropriate understanding of sharing of data, because all of the things that we engage people in are by consent. You know, nothing we do is mandatory. So there's a lot of partnership work through, for example, the Torvine Economic and Activity Group, to work with partners both in the voluntary sector, DWP, Careers Wales, to encourage people that could benefit from the services that we and others provide. So I think it's difficult to say whether there's a cause and effect from universal credit itself. I think there's assertive outreach to try and get people there. We have to accept there is a better employment market in terms of numbers. The quality of jobs is still an issue. We do have support for people who are in work to help them upskill, and that's Working Skills for Adults, which is a project that we lead on regionally as well. And we are hoping to have approval for a project soon which will help us try and address the impacts of underemployment. So we're waiting, fingers crossed, off WEFO. It's interesting, you know, with Brexit actually we are hoping to get another portion of ESF money coming through for that. So yes, I think universal credit brings a number of challenges for the individuals that are now receiving that as benefit. It also brings a number of challenges in trying to analyse some of the data. But again, we work closely with DWP on trying to resolve that as well.
Alan wanted to come in.
Thank you, Chair. In relation to this, with the chart on page 38, which is the bottom chart of 523 on the number of workless households, there's been a great reduction in that over the last, the 3 years, 2016, not the last 3 years. I was just wondering, do you know how much this is driven by national welfare policies and how much is driven by business growth? And then in relation to that, how much has this reduction actually driven up in work poverty? Is this an effect on that number as well?
There's some very good questions, yes. I think what we have to recognise again is there are some limitations within this data. So what we can't always say is the work that we do has a direct cause and effect, because of course there are lots of other interventions out there. So for example, within the Department of Work and Pensions, there will be some interventions that are mandated. So the benefit cap, some requirements for individuals who are on certain benefits. You may remember the advent of the work programme, which is now winding down. Lots of people were mandated, if they were 2 years, 24 months unemployed, to attend work programme. So clearly there are some successes for getting people into work out of that. You can have a view on mandation or not, but yes, some of those changes will have been because of some of the work through mandated provision. They will have been as a result of our contribution in engaging with people and helping them to get jobs, and there will be other external factors in that. Has getting people into work driven up in work poverty? I think in some ways perversely, possibly because of the number of short-term zero-hour type contracts, which mean that if somebody is in work, which is what the national strategy as well is wanting, and what DWP want, but actually when they are in work, they may still need to receive a benefit, and as a result of benefit changes, that may have a further impact on the household income, which really brings us back to one of the points that I think possibly you made earlier, which is the importance of bringing in and enabling people to access high quality jobs. And certainly, again, going back to the regional game, the Cardiff City region, the City Deal, the opportunity to have high quality jobs within the region that are accessible by everybody from all parts of the region, which obviously for us in Torfaen is very important. I think that is the real key. Because it's not just a case of being employed takes you out of poverty, you need to be in secure quality employment.
To add to that, if I may, if you don't have high quality jobs and wealth generation, the foundational economy of Torfaen won't grow as well, because you have to have that wealth to create the demand for local goods and services. So there is a direct correlation that sometimes gets missed when we use these terms to hive off bits and pieces. It is linked as well.
Stuart, you wanted to come in?
Yeah. What strikes me about this, because anecdotally as a ward councillor, and I'm not talking about the ward, I'm saying you see a lot of people out there who are kind of an economy of their own. You know, they do things for each other, which always strikes me as really positive. And I don't know how we tap into it. Remember the old days when I used to run a social action centre, and the things that people do for each other in terms of non-economic activity, and how we tap into that, because it always strikes me there's something in there. I mean, sometimes I've worked in the voluntary sector, how we can tap into that to develop up this kind of work. And I'm going to say something later about that as well, by the way, because I just see it's key to how we develop things. And I've banged on about it a few years past, as Dawson well knows. And it just strikes me there's a whole economy, a whole way of doing things we never, ever reach. And a lot of people that are disabled, mentally ill, older, etc., etc., we're kind of missing a trick there, I think. And they have a life that's outside of all these statistics. I think you know what I'm talking about as well. And it just strikes me that all those people that are kind of written off by the system or we can't engage with for one reason or another, maybe because they are ill or something like that, we just sort of missing it. I know we've been in that business. If
I can start, and I think Dawson wants to come in as well. You may be aware of the new Work and Health programme from Department of Work and Pensions. One of the things the Cardiff City region did was got an element of co-design within that. So along with a colleague from Welsh Government, I'm actually a member of that group that did that, and we meet monthly now on the performance monitoring through Work and Health programme. Work and Health programme is aimed at engaging individuals directly through job centre offices, people who may have a work-limiting health condition, which could be a broad range of things, and they are identified from their conversations with their work coaches, and Work and Health programme, which is delivered by Remploy across Wales, will deliver customised support. So I think the idea that I think you referred to is of people being written off. I think everybody is coming around to the idea that actually you shouldn't write anybody off, and it's good to see Department of Work and Pension coming up with a programme now that is a replacement programme that is not very much mandated. Most people it's voluntary for, and it's good that they allowed, you know, Cardiff City Region to have an involvement within that. So I think there are much more connections being made with those issues of work-limiting health condition, both for people in work and for people who want to access work. The issues around mental health, are researched very well now, and the issues around us making sure that we can try and introduce in some of the funded interventions provisions to help deal with that. We've certainly seen a rise in the individuals that we help, the complex nature of some people's barriers. And relating to the point you made about this sort of economy of people helping each other, I think one of the added benefits that we find when people do access our programmes is they very, very often then start helping each other. And we help to generate a network. For some people, they've been socially isolated as well, and actually started to participate in something which is about employment, has other benefits for them, and they develop a new network, and people do help each other out. Volunteering, again, some people underestimate the power of volunteering to have on their CV to help them get a job, and again we're seeing good results from that, and volunteering is a hard target for us in the project. So I know as councillors you have involvement with lots of organisations, and if you're identifying any opportunities through other parts of your work for where people could volunteer, I would be most interested to hear, because we need to get people into volunteering as a step to work. Thank you.
I'll bring Dawson in. Councillor Bevan wanted to say something.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is again to do with skills and employability, and I wondered if you could provide some further information, please, surrounding the extent that Torfaen engages with local employers to determine whether we are getting people with the right skills and employability assets, if you like. On the report you mentioned, I think it's on page, I've lost it now. Sorry, I had it here a minute ago. Anyway, it was working. It was basically talking about working with Torfaen businesses and stakeholder groups. Sorry, 27, page 27. You've got a business support providers network, and I wonder really if you could provide a bit more information surrounding skills and employability of people in Torfaen and consultation with employers.
Let me come in first. I thought you was going to ask Councillor Bevan was going to be on the same theme as Councillor Ashley. So, did Dawson want to add anything to Councillor Ashley's point?
If I may, please, yeah. Until quite recently, we ran the Torfaen Effect programme, which was funded via Welsh Government and Torfaen Council, which was based on the principles of the Sorority Institute, and it was specifically aimed at the groups that Councillor Ashley has alluded to. Welsh Government pulled the funding on that, and then our contribution was taken as a saving. So we're now waiting via the South of Wales portal on the replacement programme for that and how it's going to look. And it's something that we have recognised for quite a while now. The Effect programme did have some great results and worked with people that would never have started a business, but it is very, when you're dealing with those groups, it's very resource intensive, and you have to, it takes a lot longer to bring the idea to actual business. So, as I say, but it is a potential source, and it is something, is an area we have worked in and would be keen to work in again.
Okay, can we go back now to Councillor Bevan's point, and I think, Karen, you were going to try and deal with that.
Yes, thanks very much for the question. It's very timely because we've recently held the Jobs Fair in Cwmbran. We hold them twice a year, generally, and it's a lot of engagement, as you can imagine, with a lot of employers. It's been very pleasing to see that year on year, the success and the size of that has grown considerably. I can look up the precise numbers and send them if you like them, but generally speaking, we had some not very far short of 600 people actually signed in and came to the Jobs Fair. We had, amongst the employers that were present, and there were some small and some very big names present there as well, there were 500 job vacancies available. Now, that's not to say that the people who walk through the door were necessarily a match for the jobs there, but what we will do is we always follow up on that. But the opportunity to engage with businesses of all sizes is really, really important in helping people to get into employment. Some of the things that we do with employers, and particularly with SMEs and micro-employers who often want to take somebody on, but actually, if they're a sole trader or very small, they're too busy doing the work to actually take the time out. So we do engage. We've got some employer liaison officers who engage with employers to be able to say, OK, what is it you need? Well, we'll help them design the job description. We'll help them consider the marketing. What we tend to do is say, well, if you want us to do a first sift, for example, of candidates that come through, then we're more than happy to do that. We'll give any amount of support. Traditionally, we don't ask that people, her employer takes on. We're not presumptuous. But what we do say is, well, if we help you and support you, will you at least give a number of guaranteed interviews to the people that come through? And that's worked very, very successfully with a number of people getting jobs through that type of model.
Can I just add something to what Karen's just said? One of the new things that we've been working on is a Torfaen Business Forum, which has been written about in the report very briefly. It came out of our Valleys Task Force workshop up at Blanhaver Workman's Hall. And the two themes that are being looked at the moment is skills and skill requirements and local procurement. So we're actively engaging with local businesses to actually get the information, what do they need, to work with Karen once again, so that the programmes can be put forward. So that work is going on as well. So it's not what we think, it is consultation.
Okay, I've got two councillors want to come in. Emma's first, then Stuart.
Thank you, Chair. Are you seeing a lot more sort of instances of where people are working within the new sort of phenomenon of the gig economy? Where people are sort of, employed on a as and when basis and paid for jobs when they do them as they arise?
Yes is the short answer to that. Yes, we do see more of the temporary type and 0 hours contracts. In some cases, if we've got an individual who is a long way from the labour market, getting them into work, which is a small number of hours, can be a very good start, because sometimes to take on a full-time job would be too much of a leap, for example. We do, however, have some criteria where if the person goes into work and it's less than 16 hours, we're not allowed to count it as a job outcome, but we can still count the fact that it's positive that they've started work. And clearly what we try and do then by having a suite of employability programmes is they might have come through Bridges into Work or Inspire to Work or Communities for Work, but we've then got working skills for adults, which supports people to gain qualifications once they're employed. Now, the good thing about that is there is no criteria for the number of hours they're employed. As long as they're employed, they can benefit. And we can provide then, up to a certain amount, obviously, of volume, but we can provide free qualifications and training to fit in with their work, which will hopefully help them progress. Because, as I mentioned before, people going into low-paid and vulnerable employment, research is showing that sometimes they don't actually manage to progress out of that, maybe for 10 years. I think one recent research paper I looked at said, which is quite sad, because people get enthused by getting into employment. You want to help them succeed and become sustainable in their own right then afterwards. If I could, I was just going to add to the further point. When Dawson and his team are working with employers who might be coming into the area, the other good thing that we do, and obviously you imagine that is often very confidential, commercially in confidence, at a point at which it's looking like it might become a reality, we also develop customised pre-employment courses, if you like, in relation to what the employer might want. So we can be helping people to train in a particular way and to learn about certain vocations. And they may or may not, that employer may or may not come into the area, but actually there's still been valuable training even if they don't. But we do try and customise the training. So if we know someone's coming in or expanding, then they've got a pool of people going through for recruitment that already know about their systems and processes. So we are, we're looking to expand on that.
Thanks for that. Stuart, you wanted to come in?
I was just reflecting back to the resources scrutiny, which I've been chair for a while, but one of the things we did was procurement, and one of the comments we made about local procurement and having the mechanisms for council and councils, because we've got community councils as well, bear in mind I'm also on that, the opportunity for local businesses to tender in, there's lots of opportunities. I don't know how good the mechanisms are. I know WCBA are also doing the voluntary sector as well. It seems obvious, you're smiling, but we maybe need, if it's not good, we need to look at that. And maybe somewhat of a recommendation we could look at. How we get that so it's tailored for all of the counties, not just us. So look at that as a recommendation, because it is something that needs to be. I'm not going to go down the Brexit line, but there's something in there as well when you look at it, in terms of thinking local, acting global. It's back to the Schumacher recommendation on economic terms, because at the end of the day, I think some people are appalled where things do go at a very broad level or even a local level. I don't hear your comments on that.
To be honest with you, that's the driver for the work at the Torfaen Business Forum, as we are calling it at the moment, is the tack that they're taking. One of the things that we have arranged is that they will be meeting Andrew Maisie, our procurement officer, because in all fairness to Andrew, he's very, very keen on getting something going along those lines himself. He's wrapped up in all sorts of procurement rules. The procurement model in Wales is not conducive to small providers. Let's be honest about it. And it's one of the things that the Business Forum want to tackle, the model rather than the implementation of it. So it is recognised.
Can I quickly come back and say that's what we picked up when we did it at Resources a few years back, was exactly that. Yeah. Because it's not good for small, they can never get in there. And I think the WCVA thing, when they did it in the voluntary sector, they had the same problem, didn't they?
I think there's a perception that it's a magic wand and you can just give the work out.
No.
And it's not as simple as that. No. And that's why it's important that our procurement department, through ourselves, and the business people that are looking at the procurement model work together. Because unless they do, you will not come up with a viable solution.
Do you want to come in?
Throw something into the mix is an interesting thing. I was attending an investment management conference up in London recently, and they threw something into the mix that I hadn't really thought about, and that was a generational thing in terms of skills and employability. I sort of said this to my mum, that her generation really was the last one, that if you worked hard you could have had a job for life.
Yeah.
I'm in a generation now. My mother would have been the baby boomers. I'm the tail end of the baby boomers, right on the merge of what they call baby boomers and Generation X. And now, of course, we've got millennials. And throughout my working career, I got made redundant a couple of times and had to completely retrain and pursue completely different careers. And I think going forwards, that's going to be more important for the millennials coming through to have that sort of skill set which is transferable, because the likelihood is, for the duration of their working careers, they're likely to have multiple different jobs spanning different careers, and it's more about transferable skill sets that they can take from one job to another. And I was wondering whether any work had been done, looking at not just, I suppose, the loss of expertise from the baby boomers retiring, but the millennials coming up now. And that was quite interesting, that sort of categorisation of generations.
Then I can't come in first.
Yes, I mean, you're absolutely right. I think I was listening to the radio last week, and I think the piece of research there was that somebody born, I think it was in 2000 or something, was likely now to have 12 jobs through their lifetime, their working lifetime. And bearing in mind their working lifetime, you know, we don't know what the retirement age might be for those folk either. The issue of transferable skills is very important, I think, because a lot of the things that we focus on, bearing in mind that a lot of the work that we do in the qualification levels are at the level of sort of level 2 type qualifications, are for people to have good communication skills, also the soft skills of turning up, you know, on time, every time, the work ethic, because for some people, they're not in an environment where, you know, they're in a workless household. There are some generations where there have been worklessness. So it's all about those transferable skills of the literacy, the numeracy, digital technology, you know, being digitally literate as well, and being able to say to someone, well, yes, as long as you've got the basis, it doesn't actually matter whether you're in retail and you're selling something, or whether you have to become a receptionist or whatever. I'm using those examples. Customer service skills are in everything. Even if you're not outward facing, within the council, we're all customers of each other, whether it's one department to another. You know, knowing how to speak to people at different levels, knowing how to help and assist. So a lot of that is threaded through all of the other things which might be very specific, you know, enabling someone to get their CSCS card because there's a construction opportunity, yes? But actually, the employer doesn't just want them to have the CSCS card, they want to know they're going to turn up, they're going to be polite, they're not going to be on their phone all day, they're actually, you know, there's lots of understanding about the normal work ethic that I think are fed through these programmes as well. But you're absolutely right, being able to develop people who are resilient and at a point at which there is a crisis are able then to help themselves. I think that is the aim that everybody is hoping to get to, so that people don't need to come back. And picking up as well your point on redundancy, as some of the things that we also see are people who might have been employed for many, many years, but they become made redundant. They don't have, just because they've worked for 20 years, 10 years, however, they don't necessarily have the skills to then fill in an application form because they haven't done it for a long time. Maybe they didn't have a formal interview for their first job. So we are seeing some of those needs in the workforce where people become vulnerable, and ideally what we want to do, particularly with the underemployment bit that we hope is going to be is to help people to prepare. So if I'm in a part-time job, actually what do I need to do to actually get either a better paid job or more hours, and helping people to be more resilient.
Good, you want to come in?
Thank you very much. Emma raised the gig economy. There's other economies out there which I think you know as well. The green economy, there's the Faber economy. There's a whole lot of them. I think working in the voluntary sector like I've done for years, there's a whole lot of these things out there. I think sometimes we don't recognise them. I mean, councillors are in this one as well sometimes. There's a whole lot of things going on. I wonder how we tap in them, because I know there was a lot of talk about local economies. Monmouthshire does it with a vengeance. And I wonder, we sometimes, I was going to bring this up here because I think we miss out so-called alternative economy, isn't there? And we need to sort of tap into that one, because some people are going to make quite a living out of it. You've got people making a living on the internet now. eBay is the favourite one. I did a course you put on that, thinking about it. And I know a lot of people make money out of that. And so there's lots of things you've got to get your head around that are not conventional ways of making a living, and people make, yeah.
Absolutely, completely agree. And I think the use of using online services to be able to generate an income for oneself, again, is something that is visible within the Work and Health programme, is not writ large in our currently funded programmes, but we do have an element of being able to count people going into self-employment as an unemployment outcome, and of course that could be through any means. I think, you know, there is a capacity issue perhaps in what is funded to say, okay, we'll do a big drive on something like that. But I think it's, you know, what we do is, and particularly for young people, so in Inspire to Work, Gareth Jones, who leads on that project for me, you know, very keen with young people, particularly vulnerable young people, if they've got an interest in something, can that be developed into self-employment? So we're trying to work with people, on lots of things like that, whether it's website design, whether, even the websites, I suppose, with social media now are considered a bit old hat. I'm showing my age here, really. But yes, the use of Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of those methods of marketing, publicising, and it is unfortunate that, yes, the Effect programme unfortunately isn't funded anymore, because the basis of that was taking an individual's idea and interest to see if they could generate economy and generate their income out of that.
I'd like to move on now. David, do you want to ask the next question? Because I know you're very keen on promoting new businesses. It's the number 2 under skills and...
Thank you, Chair. What opportunities are in place for new apprenticeships in Torfaen, and do you promote this at all with new businesses?
Yes, we do. I think there is more that we can do. There is the apprentice matching service, which is available via the Welsh Government site. Torfaen Training has 3 account managers, which was a new innovation for us probably just over a year or so ago, with an idea of having a better service for employers. And I think this is something that we've talked about, Dawson and I, and that we want to expand across the council. It's important. Employers are busy people. Time is money. They don't want half a dozen people knocking on their door if they can have one person having a holistic conversation. So I think that's the ideal we want to get to. But certainly Torfaen Training does a lot of marketing to new businesses when we know about them through Dawson's team coming into the area. And they have a programme of target marketing existing employers. There are lots of employers that we're in. We're not the only training provider in Torfaen, and certainly Torfaen Training has apprentices that are all over South West and even into Mid West through a supply chain of 10 subcontractors that we have. So there is marketing there. Do I think we can do more? Yes, I do think there is. We've recently completely revamped the website to make that much more friendly and at the level that it should be for businesses to engage with. Last October, I was absolutely thrilled because for the first time that I was ever aware of, and certainly since my involvement with Torfaen Training over the last 3 years, we had 2 finalists at the Apprenticeship Awards event at the Celtic Manor, which was absolutely fantastic because that raises the profile. We didn't win, unfortunately, but we had 2 finalists, and when you consider that's apprenticeships across the whole of Wales, that was a remarkable feat. So, short answer, yes. Can we do more? Yes. Willing to explore all opportunities with businesses if you think there are some gaps in what we're doing and trying to plug those.
Just to add to what Karen said, the Torfaen Business Forum, one of the things they're looking at is skills, and it's looking at the stuff you just said, Councillor. So it is recognising that there is some work to be done, and it's recognising, it's working with the businesses to see where those gaps are, so that we can work with Karen to plug those gaps as well. So yeah, there's extra work on top of what Karen just said actually taking place now. The next forum meeting is the 24th of May, and we should have some feedback on that there.
Okay. David?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah. I own a local business within Torfaen, and then I employ quite a few people. You say you're going to push this out. How do I get to see this? Because I've never noticed anything at all from Torfaen at all. So I'd be interested in what you're going to do to actually get the message out there, because I'm not being rude or anything, but I haven't seen anything come my way.
That's absolutely fine, and now I know you can be sure you're going to get a personal attention. please spread the word to your friends and colleagues in the business world, and you'll be getting a call from someone at Torfaen Training, or indeed myself, shortly.
Councillor Thomas, you asked for that.
Thank you.
Are we going to move on now to the impact of zero tolls? And I'm going to ask Stuart to ask the question. Before I do so, though, what I've noticed recently, and it's anecdotally, the housing market seems to be heating up locally. And I even had an example yesterday of gazumping going on in Griffithstown. Now, I'm just throwing that in as an example. Just as an example. And I did use the term anecdotally. But Stuart, ask the general question about the impact of zero tolls, please.
Yes, certainly, Chair. Has there been an increase in interest from businesses or potential new businesses since the announcements of zero tolls on the Severn Bridge? And what marketing work has been carried out to get in early and promote the additional benefits of relocating into Torvine?
The honest answer to that is we haven't seen any increase in activity of businesses looking to move from Bristol to here. All right. What you've got to bear in mind is that if you're going to relocate a business, it's a very expensive thing to do. All right. So it's not just about cheap land opportunities. It's not just about going to somewhere because it's a lot nicer and there's more grants. There's a lot of money involved in relocating a business. Right. So that's number one. All right. Saying that, we're hopeful that it's going to happen. We sell Torvine as is put in the report on a good place to do business. We have not specifically targeted Bristol at this present moment in time. We have had success with businesses from that area moving over to Geraint at Springboard in the past as well. And there are really no intentions from us to specifically target that area for business. We're going to carry on marketing as we do. A lot of our inward investment stuff is through Welsh Government, and we rely on Welsh Government marketing for that. We work with them when they introduce businesses to us. But the honest answer to you at the moment is no, we're not seeing anything at this present moment in time.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that. And I understand why you were saying that it is a costly business to relocate. But I would have thought we could do some paper exercise in the eventuality of people relocating. And bearing in mind, at the moment, the toll bridge charges hasn't come off. So you may see a different outcome altogether once the charges do come off.
And that's what we're waiting for, if you want the honest answer. There aren't, as I say, whether Welsh Government have any plans, because most of our inward investment marketing is through Welsh Government because of, and I'm going to go back to it, and I've banked on about it all afternoon, lack of money. I can't run a Rolls Royce on a mini engine.
You want to come in? And then David?
I was intrigued because obviously the other exercise we're going through at the moment, those of us on the planning committee are only too aware, and those of us on Cumbrae Community Council will be aware of this. We've had a conversation with Adrian Wilcox about the LDP, and obviously you are very well aware of this bits of land that suit. I mean, the Medipark's the good one, and there's other identifiable areas where we could site. And I noticed that we've only got so many large employers here, and it must be where we're planning to put businesses, and you've only got so many pictures, as it were, for people to come in here.
If I can answer that, to go back to my previous answer, because we don't have a lot of money, we have to be targeted with what we've got. Yeah. So we are looking at Medipark is going to be one of our priorities. Yeah. So any marketing money that we have will be attached to that Medipark, and that Medipark and getting businesses onto that will be one of our main priorities. One of the things we have to do, and one of the new ways we have to work, is be specific in what we do. We can't be generic anymore. We have to target specific things. A strategic priority for Torvine is going to be the Medipark.
Okay. We'll come to the Medipark in a minute.
Thank you, Chair. You have kind of answered the question I was going to ask. But if I was a business in Bristol and I wanted to come to Torvine, have you got any examples of what would attract me to come to Torvine?
If you were a business in Bristol and you approached us at this present moment in time, we would say to you that our land prices, our building prices are cheaper than Bristol. We have a loyal workforce, and that's been proven that a lot of our workforce will stay in the same job for 10, 15 years. They don't move for an extra 50 pence an hour. Right? We also sell the support that we give around the skills and training that Karen gives. Also, us working with you to address any planning issues. We are really the shop front to the council and all the council services that we give, and not many councils do that. We will also arrange to meet Welsh Government officers so that you can access the grant funding programmes via Welsh Government. So basically what we do is we take the legwork out of things for you, and we form a relationship with you so that as your business progresses, as your business grows, then we're there to get the right support in there for you. And that's what we work on. We work on building relationships, because building relationships doesn't cost that much money.
Thank you for that. Was, a very comprehensive answer. Thanks a lot.
Alan, you wanted to come in and then Stuart.
Yes, Chair.
Just Alan.
I think Bristol's a bit of a red herring anyway, because I don't see us attracting a great deal from there, particularly with their ribbon development out of Avonmouth right up through to the bridge. And there's a lot of land being developed from there, and now they can go into Wales free. A lot will depend on where their transport takes and their transport costs of the product that they're producing. But I just want to go back to one element of this, which is in the report, and that is, what is Torvine's really unique selling point? There are a number of things that Dawson said that could be replicated by a number of authorities, some of which sit between us and Bristol, and ourselves in Cardiff. But what is really unique about us? Because I'm not getting that we have enough of a unique selling point to really be totally attractive to some of these industries.
The main selling point we have, right, is as you come west along the M4, the first place that you will get Tier 1 funding via any government grant programmes is Torvine. So you turn left, 5 minutes off junction 26, and you get top level funding, and you get funding that's not available in other parts of Wales.
Sorry, and how much is that worth?
It's very difficult to say how much it's worth, because it can be up to 50% funding with us, and it can be down as low as 20% funding in other areas. So it all depends on the scheme that's brought forward and whether it's eligible for grant funding.
A couple of the councillors are commenting, Dawson, it's not in the report about this Tier 1.
It's not in the report about the Tier 1, no. And the reason for that is because of the actual changing funding environment that we're actually in the middle of now, right? So that could change, but at this present moment in time, our unique selling point is as I've explained.
Move on now to, we got 3 questions around. Oh, sorry. Oh, go on then.
The other one, which the Health Authority put the new hospital there was for, and despite the traffic jams we get, is actually we've got excellent comms, communications. If you look at, despite the road situation, we're actually good for a lot of places, and people forget that.
If you look at the report, one of the things we've said in there is our position with regards to Bristol, Cardiff and Birmingham.
Yeah.
Now, Norman, do you want to ask the first question under the Valley Task Force theme, please?
Sorry, let's start again. The report states the Valleys Task Force may provide the potential for a Springboard 2. If this doesn't go ahead, what other options are there for a location for Springboard 2? And will this still be a possibility without funding or support from elsewhere? Can I just say, I thought there was a piece of land next to the first Springboard ready for a second one.
I'll answer that for you. The piece of land next door to Springboard has been purchased, I believe, by Gwent Police, and will be the new police headquarters, or the car park of. So that would answer that question. The second bit, Springboard 2 won't come forward unless we gain funding from somewhere. And that is the honest answer. We will not, as a council, have the last estimated costs are about £12 million. We won't have £12 million as a council to put into that without some funding from somewhere. So without the funding, to be honest with you, the project won't move forward.
Supplement on that, because obviously the biggest problem we've got in the borough is actually getting small. I did ask somebody else on this one earlier. Getting small units down in Cwmbran because they're at a premium. And then, funny enough, we got rid of one set of studio units, which councillors here have a problem with, because people were getting, they were getting in them, and they've gone to a certain part of the council. But it is something people have identified. If you want to get small units in Cwmbran, you can't get your hands on anything, and that's been identified by local members. I'm not sure about yourselves, but trying to get hold of small premises down in Cwmbran now is relatively difficult from what we can see. We might be wrong, so please tell us we are.
Answer that.
Yeah.
The answer to your question is fully agree.
Yeah.
You won't get a small unit in Cwmbran, they are taken.
Yeah.
With regards to the disposal of, I assume you alluding to Oldbury Road.
Yeah.
I can't comment. It was nothing because I wasn't party to the decision. So the actual reasoning behind that, I don't know. I'm not prepared to comment on. There are small units across the borough that may be available, towards the north end, but small units are at a premium because, I mean, the last time we built any small units would have been the ones on Gilchrist Thomas up in Blanavon, and to be honest with you, they were filled very, very quickly.
So those sort of small, any type of small unit, industrial, craft, IndyQ type unit, you know, where anything like that would be filled with it.
Small units would be,
Yeah.
but it would depend upon funding. IndyCube, type co-working space.
Yes.
That would be more difficult to give you a straight answer on, okay, because we have tried things with regards to co-working space at Springboard and then looked at several models before the IndyCube model went in there, which had some success. But we're also looking to put an IndyCube model into Pontypool, and that hasn't happened. All right, so I'm not going to say to you I would definitely fill co-working spaces, but 500 square foot units would be an easy sell.
I'll ask the next question. You said earlier about prioritising because of various reasons. So, and you mentioned, one of you mentioned the Medipark in particular, you're going to prioritise. So, can you tell us more about what the Medipark is expected to deliver, please?
The building of the Grange University Hospital offers a unique opportunity around the Medipark. And what the Medipark will be is an opportunity to look at the research and development programmes that will come out of the hospital. It will be an opportunity to attract life sciences businesses to the area to actually work using the critical care centre as a research and development tool as well. So there's a unique opportunity around that. With regards to the critical care centre, it's a one-off for our part of the world, and because of the land availability around it, and that's one of the big things that makes the Medipark an interesting concept, is the fact that the land is available around it and within Welsh Government ownership. So there is an opportunity for us to do something special there, and also based upon the things that were said about earlier with our position with regards to Bristol, Cardiff and Birmingham, there is a golden opportunity to bring that down. It's in its early days, and there have been some discussions around it, and it is something, it gives us a opportunity that if we don't grab it, may not ever come along again.
If I could just add, obviously what we want to do as well is exploit the opportunities for training people for high quality jobs as well, the whole range of jobs that are going to ensue from that. And again, this is where partnership working is important, because obviously the range of jobs there may be supported by HE, FE provisions, as well as provisions we and others more locally might have. So it is important, as Dawson said, the University Hospital, it is a great one-off, and if we get the Medipark associated with it, it's a fabulous opportunity for people in Torfaen, and recognising it's a marvellous opportunity for the Cardiff City region as well.
Thank you, Chair. Just on that point, as councillor for that ward, obviously I welcome that investment coming in and creation of jobs. And I don't wish to appear to put a dampener on it too much, but in the recent LDP that was adopted by the council, it actually highlighted a new factor. It brought to light that there are concerns now raised over the cost of associated earthworks. I think anyone who sort of lived down in that ward and seen the amount of earth that's physically being moved in these massive trucks to create the new access road up there. There's a phenomenal tonnage of earth that's been moved and taken away. And that's been highlighted now as a potential issue towards this development of this Medipark, is the associated costs of these earthworks. And the second concern I've got is the fact that the funding from Welsh Government is still means that we in Torfaen here have to make a significant contribution towards the overall costs. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's even match funding pound for pound. I think it's 70-30 was the ratio. I'm not sure, I might be wrong on that, but are those sort of barriers overcomable in the near to medium term? Because the hospital's coming on site spring 2021 is the forecast opening date.
The answer to the questions are yes, there are infrastructure challenges around the Medipark, and funding challenges as well. And I think what we have to do, and this is where it's going to be new ground for us, is attracting private sector investment into that site as well, because as you rightly pointed out, it's not going to be 100% grant funding. So that's the challenges that we face, and it's quite right that you pointed them out. They are there. We've got to work to overcome them.
I mean, I raised this in full council. I used to be the research and development statistician for the UK for a number of years, and unfortunately Wales is bottom of the league. We compete with Northern Ireland in terms of R&D. The successful science parks tend to be clustered around universities, particularly around Cambridge and Oxford. Now, how robust do you think our links with the HE sector are going to be? Because without those links, this Medipark will not happen.
If I can take initially, as part of a precursor to the Cardiff Capital Region, was the Regional Learning and Skills Partnership, LSKIP, which you may be familiar with the terminology, which I think is in the process of being adopted as part of the Cardiff Capital Region structure. So I think when it comes to ensuring that those type of opportunities linked to the HE sector, I think that's where that Regional Skills Partnership, which is now the Employment and Skills Board within Cardiff City Region, really needs to come into its own. The Cardiff University Hospital, the Grange University Hospital is a unique opportunity. It's unique for Torfaen. It's also, recently unique for the Cardiff City region. So I think that is where we need to be, through our contacts through Cardiff City region, ensuring that actually HE are responding, because it is a wonderful opportunity. You know, there are challenges, as Dawson's articulated. What we all have to do is plan for the future. We've got to have a glass half full when we're going forward, because if we don't start doing planning for things, we're not ready for them when they happen, and someone else may have taken that opportunity. So I think there's some engagement there, which is at a perhaps not the level that Dawson and I are operating at, but there's an opportunity to ensure that HE are engaged, because I think, yes, you're absolutely right. Without HE involvement in that, the R&D is much more difficult to try and structure.
Just to add to what Karen has said, university is vital to it, and it won't work without it. But bear in mind, Cardiff University is literally 20 minutes down the M4. We're not saying that we're 100 miles away from the nearest university. There's possibilities also. I mean, the Medi School, there's possibilities. You've got the Medi Centre within the University of Hospital of Wales as well. There's opportunities to work there as well. And yeah, it is part of the challenge. It's what makes the project very interesting, from my point of view.
Yeah. And the rewards are actually, if it's a success, are very great, because jobs in R&D are normally at the higher end of the wage scale.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big things to look at is that I did some work previously with St John's Innovation up in Cambridge, and it really does trade off the reputation of Cambridge University and what it does. So, you know, like I said, you know, Cardiff University has a reputation, not as strong as Cambridge. I'm not saying that. No, but there is a golden opportunity that, if all the parties are willing, then it can come together.
I think that the next question has already been dealt with to some extent, but Stuart, do you want to?
Yes. Can you explain why the strategic hub is Cwmbran based rather than concentrating on the whole of the borough? This is Valley Partnership country, isn't it?
I think what we found when we were engaging with Valley's Task Force, the Valley's Task Force had gone around the various regions. They had done engagement, consultation exercises, and then from the first draft they identified a number of locations, or they identified a number of strategic hubs. There was some, I think possibly, certainly from my perspective, initially some confusion as to whether a strategic hub was also a physical hub, or whereas actually it's about a coalescence of services, functions, etc. There were some differences, I think, between the initial draft and then things that came out. But yes, Cwmbran, I believe, from my understanding, and Dawson, I don't know if yours is any different, was selected, if you like, from within Valley's Task Force, from their consultations that they did across the region. Now, when I had a conversation with the person who was in post at the time on this, the Welsh Government officer, he was assuring me, because I was saying, well, we've got lots of other hubs in other places. So from the point of view of community hubs linked to strategic hubs and skills and employability, we do work up in Blaenavon, at Churchview, we're doing work, looking to do work in Panteg, we do things all around the place. So what was the point, what was the added value of a strategic hub? So from the skills and employability end, it was about bringing together things that coalesce to have that dynamic to help drive up the opportunities. Now, I think there's possibly a slightly different conversation around the sort of more physical elements of economic development, which Dawson, that's my experience of it.
The honest answer to your question was that the Valley's Task Force reports or whatever came out, and Cwmbran was in there. The reasons behind it, or the big reasons behind it, are the fact that there is land available within Cwmbran that is deliverable.
I would like to make a comment. We actually asked the Minister at a Community Council meeting, and he said more or less what you said. focus on the whole of the county, but you can on a place. And I think they function that way. There's no offence to anybody else at all in that sense, and his comment was very much that along that lines. I mean, we recognise very much that you do the whole of the borough, and the spin-off, he reckoned, was for the whole of the borough. So, I mean, that was the view we seemed to have at a community council meeting. Do it, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just be brief on this. It's questionable. You say that there's land available for future employment possibilities, but there's also land available in the north of the borough as well. So I don't understand the rationale there, really.
The rationale, as Karen has explained to you, is that through their consultations, Cwmbran was chosen as the strategic hub for our area. We have pushed the boundaries on it, and it is bigger than it was originally supposed to be, and it is the South Torfaen strategic hub, not the Cwmbran strategic hub now. So there has been a lot of work and a lot of negotiation behind where it is now, is the honest answer to that. It's up to us to make sure that people in the north of the borough are able to take full advantage of the opportunities that come through it, the same as we would if the opportunity was in the north for people in the south.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, this is more of a comment than a question, but I think the issues really when Councillor Evans is making the point, I think it comes back to infrastructure. Yeah. The infrastructure is more in place to service and support Cwmbran than it is up in Blaenavon. Whether that changes, 10, 15 years' time, when we get the Cardiff City regional deal and there's metro lines all up the valleys, I don't know, then the situation might change. But there is the point that there is land available up there, but it would very much depend on the nature of the businesses coming in. If they're manufacturing based, then they're going to need the infrastructure in place, and without that significant investment in infrastructure, we're not going to be able to persuade these companies to relocate up to areas in the north of the borough, unless we can get that infrastructure developed as part of the Cardiff City regional deal. That was what I was going to say on that.
And if I can just come in, the only comment I'd make, picking up what Stuart said, really is, and I think you've answered that, Dawson. Okay, it's the South Cwmbran hub now, but from the perspective of the committee, we all represent North and South, and it should be opportunities for all in terms of what's making it.
I obviously represent South, but I would make a very strong point when I was talking on the matter of the LDP that we actually represent, as council, represent the whole of the borough, and I take that point very strongly, because at the end of the day, the problem we've got with housing particularly is that housing opportunity in this valley, especially social housing, it is a finite resource. So we have to look at anybody that comes here for a job has to look at wherever they can get the housing. And that, certainly when you're talking to the planning planners as opposed to the city planning, it's important that you look at Torfaen as a whole. And I take Stuart's point on this all the time on this. We've got communities up and down, and they're all very, very good communities. And we need to have jobs in every single one of them, employment in every single one.
I'd just like to point out something. I am employed by the borough.
Yeah.
All right, and jobs in Blaenavon is just as important to me as jobs are in Cwmbran. Yeah. And I have actually done a lot of work through my time with Torfaen in the north of the borough. I only live over the road in Nantiglow, so I know how important it is. But with the situation that we have at this present moment in time, we have to make sure that everybody in the north can get to the opportunities that are right through the borough.
Yeah. Dawson, the points well made. I think, Stuart, did you want to have the final word on this?
I wanted to come in very briefly, Chair, and thank you for those comments, very well received. It's a reply to your comments, really, Councillor Bevan, that the strategic network is very important. But I should point out that we've got a strategic network to the edge of the valley as well.
Okay. Move on. Research and marketing now we look at. Alan, do you want...
Sorry, Chair, can I just say... quickly on that. I think the situation is fluid, and I think it's going to change over time. I think at the moment we've got a lot of demand for housing supply for land in the south of the borough around Cwmbran, and we're going to reach saturation point. And I think the tolls coming off the Severn Bridge is going to be influential. We've started to see that already in places like Chepstow. I think that has got potential to continue to spread into Torfaen as people relocate across the bridge once they don't have to pay the fees. And once Cwmbran area, the land bank, is saturated for housing supply, then there's going to be increased focus on the north of the borough in Blaenavon for building new housing, because the land supply just won't be there in the south of the borough. And I think as a result, that might bring up the infrastructure links in its own right, alongside what's going on with the Cardiff City regional deal. So I do think over a protracted period of time, we're going to start to see more of a focus on the north of Torfaen.
Thank you for that, Hugh. We'll move on now. Alan, do you want to start the next section for us, please, on research and marketing?
Okay, thank you, Chair. What work is carried out to find out what areas of business, either people or new businesses, are interested in being involved in? And since I got my snout in the trough, I had a little ride at that. Is there any research being done in terms of what businesses will be necessary and could be attractive to us in 10 to 20 years' time?
If I start on this one, there's a regional skills plan that is produced by the regional skills partnerships. So there are 3 across Wales, and they're required to produce an annual skills audit and an annual skills plan. That will be enclosed within Cardiff City region document in the next iteration of that. But across Wales, each of the regional learning partnerships are required by Welsh Government to produce that, and that has takes a view of what the skills situation is, what the employment situation is, but also has a forward planning function to it, using research that's done and how they commission that research. I'm not sure, but I can put you in touch with someone from the office if you're interested in that. That's one method that I know that's done. I mean, presumably Welsh Government will do particular research. At the moment, I would say when it comes to the skills and employability type of angle, and my team's looking to see what local businesses might want and need, that's more done by the relationships that they've built up and the conversations with them to have, rather than a specific statistical research. The other things that we do through the account managers is we will look, for example, at the moment recently we've looked at the Panteg ward to see what opportunities may be there for people, and to look to, I think Councillor Yowell is currently looking at where might be a location that we might want to put some support in for skills and employability. So we do it on a sort of location basis, similar, Stuart, Councillor, that we did in Blaenavon when we liaise with Melin and run a job club there every so often. So I think from a Torfaen perspective, from my perspective, it's about local relationship and using those relationships to feed the local knowledge and the local LMI, whilst respecting that there is a regional and obviously some national LMI that looks at more of the large labour trends in where skills might be needed or what areas of growth.
Next question, Alan. That's why I start you off on this, about unique selling point. I think we've covered that, unless, Alan, have you got anything you want to ask on that?
No, I think
we have covered that. I thought we had. So we'll turn over the page now. David, can I ask you to ask this next question, because I know you're a champion of the small business.
Thank you, Chair. What are you offering to help introduce small businesses into the area? Do you provide services such as short-term rental of rooms and units? I know we've touched on some of it, but let's put it back out there.
Right. There are incentives for small businesses to come into Torfaen via our work around the Pontypool Indoor Market, whereby we offer test trading facilities at easy in, easy out, and at a rate, a reduced rate for that. That has been mentioned in the report as well, with regards to the successes of that. We don't offer any rate relief above what's offered via the Welsh Government rate scheme. We don't offer any rental relief either. We haven't had to until now. We offer easy and easy out terms at Springboard, and I think that, and we've offered easy and easy out terms through our business centres. Albury Road was one in New Inn is another. But actual incentives other than grants that we used to run, then no, we haven't. And we don't.
Sorry, just a quick. So you're saying you haven't and you don't. Do you think that's a good idea, or do you think that's because you just said you didn't have to, or you felt you didn't have to do until now? So do you think that's perhaps something you might need to relook at?
It's something that we could relook at. I would love to have a grant scheme if I had the money, because that has been a very effective way of working with businesses, of creating jobs, of bringing projects forward within businesses. So where somebody is planning a new machine, say in 2 years' time, because there's been a grant, they've brought that forward and the employment forward. So if you're after my opinion, it's a grant scheme, it's what we would want. That has been a very, very effective and powerful tool.
I get somewhat driven mad, well, occasionally mad, as chair of allotments, people around here asking if there's any available land around. And I found out the reason why, because if I were in Bristol, funnily enough, I would be able to ask the council for half-acre, quarter-acre allotment business units. We don't have any because when the county, years ago, when the county of Monmouthshire actually got rid of its small units. If you look down on the flats, you'll find that they were down there for the whole of Monmouthshire. So we never had any in Torvine. So I wonder whether there's any possibility we could look at some acres of land somewhere around this borough to actually put out small units. Whether you think that's a good idea or not, because people want to grow things, and it's a possible business unit. People looking all around, they want to grow, chickens or bits of things. It's a possible. There's not. The thing is, there's not much land around in the private sector for doing this.
I can't comment on allotments at all, Councillor Ashley, because it doesn't come under my remit.
I'm not talking about allotments. What I'm talking about is small parcels of land where people set up businesses. They want to grow things. Put a polytunnel on there and grow greens for the restaurant.
There's a lot,
that sort of thing.
There's a lot of work being done on that kind of thing through the RDP Food Tourism project. And one of the things that's being done is being looked at is a cooperative of local producers, which has been mentioned in the report as well. There's been a lot of work with on your doorstep promotions, and a lot of work with Lanarava Manor. So there is a lot of work being done with local food producers. It's all down to land availability and who owns the land.
Can I just say it's interesting you bring co-ops. That was one of my other quick questions, because where we're going with co-ops and not-for-profit businesses as opposed to charities, that's when there is a certain amount of land that we are aware of that might be in the ownership of the council.
That land ownership I'm not aware of, and it hasn't been brought to my attention. And there's an honest offer from me to say I will work on those kind of schemes to ascertain viability. With regards to co-ops and what we're doing with co-ops and not-for-profit businesses, they're treated exactly the same way as we treat any other business. It was looked at, it was dealt with under the EFFECT project, which I've already said about the demise of, and I did have a community enterprise officer at one time, which we lost to austerity quite a while ago. So the answer is we work with them, we refer them to the Wales Co-op or to the TVA, because that's where the expertise is to deal with those kind of businesses.
Hugh in now. You wanted to come in, Hugh?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, for allowing me to come in. I was going to ask this question at the end, but because Councillor Ashley has sort of started forging in that sort of general direction, I'm going to ask the question now, because it kind of ties in a little bit with what he was saying. But on page 39 of the report, where we're looking at figures in direct comparisons between ourselves, Blaenau Gwent and Torfaen, I don't 100% agree with the sentence that says we're far more akin to Blaenau Gwent than we are Monmouthshire.
Yeah.
I think that overlooks the fact, I think we're more of a halfway house in Torfaen. That completely overlooks the fact we've got 9 rural wards in Torfaen. We've still got an active farming community, and the question I was going to ask is, a lot of the stuff we've been hearing is constraints because of lack of access to funding, and I wanted to know, it's not in the report, but that omission in itself prompts me to ask the question, what engagement do you have with the Rural Local Action Group in Torfaen that has access to sources of potential funding for these 9 urban wards rural, beg your pardon, thank you, Stuart, rural wards in Torfaen?
Well, the RDP Food Tourism Officer is directly funded by the RDP, so we work with the local action group via that. We've actually helped groups submit funding on several projects in Blanavon, Bethlehem Chapel being one of them. So we are quite active in working on that funding, and I believe, and I haven't checked this out, but most of the funding applications via that RDP programme has come out of the regeneration team that sits within the economic development. So that's the answer to your question. We're very well aware of it.
A quick supplementary, Chair. I'm on that committee as well, a recent appointee since the last elections last May. And one of the things that's been highlighted at the research that they've conducted is that the average age of the farmers in Torfaen is about 58, 59. And because of their proximity due to retirement, and also there's a reluctance amongst their siblings of the families to follow in the traditional family paths of taking on the farm after their parents are no longer able to deal with it. It's one of the things that's come out is saying that we're likely to have within the next 5 or 10 years a considerable shortage of farmers within the borough. So a lot more work needs to be done to encourage young people to pursue agriculture as a means of employment going forwards, and that's been highlighted as a significant issue. And quite often we're so focused in these chambers on Pontypool and Cwmbran, the rural wards do get overlooked quite a bit.
If I can just pick up the point about the RDP and funding, there are examples, because they're quite small packages of funding, but there are examples, certainly through our young adults programmes, of us accessing RDP money. So things like developing a plot to plate opportunity where young people are encouraged to see the value of growing vegetables, growing different things, and also then in the training kitchen we've got the life station. We've had at certain times groups of young people who may be disengaged or already neat actually accessing that. So we've used RDP money for that. We've also been able to access RDP money for a youth enterprise intervention, which again is only small but is actually tailoring to some young people who are interested in looking at self-employment and looking at enterprise. In relation to, I think, the comparison at 5.2.4 on Blaenau Gwent there, I think is under the table, which is about workless households. So I think the comparison of being more akin to Blaenau Gwent than Monmouthshire, I think, is in relation to perhaps the reasons behind workless households and the engineering background, the heavy manufacturing.
quick supplementary, Chair. I just wondered whether more work could be done with places like USC, Agricultural College, for example, in terms of attracting more young people into work within, the farms within Torfaen.
Certainly with young people, when we're engaging with young people, we've got two main programmes. One which is Inspire to Achieve, which works within schools, and that's specifically on young people who may be at risk of disengaging. So it may be we don't come in contact with all young people. So if you think of the wider school population, what those young people are being encouraged and advised to do will come from their family involvement, but come from, the curriculum, the World of Work curriculum in school, and also careers advice. So, but certainly within the groups of young people who are at risk of disengaging that we come across, we have links with Coleg Gwent. They're part of that programme as well. So obviously the S campus is part of that. So if there are young people who are interested in anything to do with farming or animals, etc., then certainly we have ways of being able to support them in that.
Thank you very much for that answer. Just one thing as an aside that came out of that forum was that there was an actual shortage, it's been highlighted in the borough, a shortage of abattoirs. So that might be another thing to take on board going forwards from the farming community there, not having been able to have their meat dealt with locally without having to travel far distances. So that might be another thing we could look into.
I know one thing that has been looked at as part of Llanarava Manor in the past.
I will follow on from Hugh for once and say some of the more successful projects we've had, which I think you've both been involved with. Obviously, the ancient Torfaen, the heritage stuff up in Blaenavon with the wall building and all the rest of it. And then the other one that Dawson and I know really well is the Waterways project, which has got a hell of a lot of people into work, or I think you might be involved with it as well. And I'm just worried now that needs to continue that, because it's such a successful project, and I've been involved with the group organising it. It just worries me that we're not doing that. It's such a good gateway to a lot of people getting into manual projects and heritage and tourism. For the amount of money we paid out for it, it's considerable. I haven't mentioned the word canals, have I? No, I have now. And I mean, that stuff is, I think, for what we've got, and the whole thing about the 5 authorities working together in another direction. I was sat chairing the meeting in the power station, and for once we had it in the power station, which was brilliant. They didn't know about it, and it was impressive. It was another partnership working on lifelong, working on heritage, and the fact that we're talking about. A partnership, a whole lot of things. I just thought it was really interesting, that one.
I think there's some stuff that we can pick up when we discuss recommendations, or here in particular some of the stuff you've raised around agriculture. So I'd like to.
Important that the heritage.
Yeah, okay. We'll pick that up as well.
I will say this whole heritage industry thing and tourism, which we do very well here.
I'd like to move on now.
Can I just point out on tourism, right, that tourism was selected by the council as part of the budget reductions in my department.
Okay, if we can move on now. Stuart, I think the last question on this section was the statistical one that you were interested in. Do you want to start that off?
Can you give us a breakdown of the locations of our enterprises across the borough?
Location of enterprises across the board. You want numbers per ward or numbers per settlement? Because we don't keep those.
Not with design.
We don't keep those figures.
We don't.
No, we don't.
Okay. Well, that's dealt with that. We'll move. Sorry, Alan, go on.
Yeah, can I ask a slightly different question to that? Do we have an estimate of what land we have available for development? The number of units we have available for use? And also, just as a rider to that, are we involved with private developers in terms of the space that they may have that we can cooperate together with in terms of development? Sorry.
No, it's a valid question. I've recently completed a piece of work on rental units available in Torvine as part of the sites and premises for City Deal. I've recently done the same with regards to development land. On a daily basis, we run a property register via our Torvine Economy and Enterprise website, and that is rental properties that are available via Torvine Council and the private sector.
Right, sorry, Chair, what about space? I mean, that was for properties available. What about the amount of space that could be available for development?
The space for development land, as I said, I have pulled that together for City Deal purposes. So at the amount of development land available in Torvine, I have that figure. I can't tell you what it is now because I haven't looked at it.
But you could.
Yeah, I could, and if it comes up as a question after this, then it won't take you a lot to answer it.
Dawson, would it be possible for you to do the same thing with land availability?
Just ask that, yeah.
No, land as in growing land.
I haven't looked at growing land.
But as it's been asked to me quite a few
I'll
times.
be honest with you, it's not a priority for me at this present moment in time.
Okay.
It's something that we can explore.
That's what I'm asking you to do.
It will be subject to prioritisation,
Yeah.
but it is something we can look at.
I just know there's a few people out there, quite a few people out there would love to look at that.
I take that on board, but it's, you know, as I said, it's not something I've done until now.
Only reason I asked that, there is a national website where for growing space, I can't remember what it's called, but there's none at all in South East Wales, or very little about to, making land availability, and it does seem it's not obvious.
I won't move on now. Hugh, you raised this issue on stakeholder groups in an earlier question, so would you like to ask this question about stakeholder groups?
Yeah, sure, I don't mind. Okay. The broad theme is stakeholder groups, as the Chair said. Please could you tell us more about the stakeholder groups, such as how they are funded, how many people are involved, and what the benefits are?
So some of the stakeholder groups, while I'm finding the right paragraph, that we mentioned were the Torvine Economic and Activity Group. I can give you, sorry, I really can't find the number. Can you give me the paragraph number, Councillor Bevan, please? So that I'm talking to the report.
Apologies. Do you want to come in then, Chair?
I can tell you the answers while Karen looks for mine, because the Torvine Torvine Business Support Network that we run comes at no cost, just officer time. The Torvine Business Forum that we've just started comes at no cost, just officer time.
And you went, yes.
Page 27.
That's all right. I've got 4.8.2 now for some reason I'd lost it the wrong way around. Yes, certainly the Torvine Economic and Activity Group is the same. It's the goodwill of it costs officer time to attend. There are a few relevant officers from the council that attend that have employability support within their remit, most of which are now within skills and employability, within neighbourhood services and planning and public protection. But there are a few interventions that are now in social care and housing. So that's officer time. I can give you the numbers and I can give you the membership if you'd like the information on that. The Torvine Economic and Activity Group also includes Department of Work and Pensions, Careers Wales, Coleg Went. It will also include a various number of voluntary sector groups and certainly groups such as Bronavon, Melin, who from time to time also may be accessing funding to support employability. So the purpose of the group was to be an open and inclusive group to bring as many stakeholders around the table that actually can help us to support our residents on their employability journey, and so that we are working together in a coordinated way and trying to avoid duplication, and people being targeted for the same support from two different strands because they just didn't know about each other. So it's had some successes. It's a long-standing group and it works very well together. When I talked about the work that we do on working with inward employers or employers who want to grow and want recruitment support, in most cases, that actually is done in collaboration with the Torfaen Economic and Activity Group. So we might know about it, and different partners may develop different support packages or pre-employment packages, but the offer to the employer would be for guaranteed interviews, and they can choose which ones they want to come through. So we are very open and inclusive with that.
It sounds as though the stakeholders, the list of stakeholders is actually, from what you've said, is a lot more comprehensive than just a couple that are identified on the report. There seems to be a lot more stakeholders that you've just...
Sorry, I think because it could have been, the report was very long as it was, so to identify the amount of detail that you might have wanted and then to give you perhaps a page list of names involved, I think we tried to err on the side of balance with the volume in the report, but absolutely more than happy to give more information on the Torfaen Economic and Activity Group or any other fora that you might be interested in.
We'll move on to the last question. Now, the last questions are on the British. Now, I understand that it's very early days in terms of the British, and probably that will be in our basket to look at for next year, but that won't preclude Stuart from asking one question on this.
Just before you do that, Councillor, Dave is the project manager for the British,
right,
and hence the reason he's been asked to come up this afternoon, because he will know a lot more about it than I do.
Well, sure. Do you want to come and just sit in Dawson's chair to answer this question? Okay, yeah. Stuart.
Thank you, Chair, and as you point out quite rightly, that most probably this will be in our basket for future discussions. But I just wanted to ask this one question, and I realise in the report it mentions that it's in very early stages, and I understand that. Can you provide us with an update on the British, such as have any potential partners come forward, and if so, what areas have they shown an interest in?
Yeah, so as you say on this one, it is early stages. One of the first actions that we've got on this is to pull together a master plan, and that master plan will look at the indicative uses that could go on that site. We certainly wouldn't be approaching partners to take things forward until we have a clearer picture of what those potential uses could be. So we haven't had any approaches from individuals around development of that site, but that's largely because we haven't created a framework, if you like, to be able to put out there to secure those partners.
Thank you, Chair. That leads me on to the question, and you mentioned the master plan, Dave. It says in the report it's about 2 months away. Are we on course for that? That was the one part that I wanted a bit of information about. And the other quick part as well is you mentioned the green projects. Could you give us a flavour of what they relate into?
Yeah, no problem. So in terms of the master plan development, it's a complicated piece of work because it's got to go hand in hand with the remediation scheme for the land as well. So it will be a bit iterative in terms of we will end up with a master plan vision, then a remediation plan, and then that master plan may be subject to change depending on what comes out of that remediation plan. So we're working towards having something over the next couple of months as a broad master plan vision that we'll be able to go out and speak to people about. We've already done a lot of community engagement around what could or couldn't be within that master plan already at this stage. So we've got some emerging ideas already, but in terms of having it all down on one piece, it'll be within the next few months, I would have thought, as a starting point for that. Specifically around the green energy opportunities on the site, there are opportunities for green energy that we're exploring. Some of the leading ones, for example, hydro is a big potential. There's certainly a lot of appetite and interest from the community in actually taking control over the hydro element of a project there. So running that scheme themselves, and that's something that we'll look to work with community groups on in the area if there's interest. The other thing that we're in very, very early stages of exploring is potential for mine water heating systems. I know Bridgend Council have recently been running something similar. So we'll go up and have a look at that. There will be viability work that will be needed on that. So we can't say with any certainty at this stage whether that's something that can come forward. But it's certainly something that we're interested in looking at. And any green energy opportunities that come up then, any of the ones that come up throughout the course of the master planning, we'll explore.
Thank you very much, Dave, and thank you for your indulgence with that question, Chair.
Bevan has suggested he's got one last question he'd like to raise. I don't know if we'll need you back, Dawson. Will we? Will we need Dawson back for this question? Well, he's coming back.
It wasn't with regards to the British, so Dawson. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was a bit dismayed to see in the report that there wasn't going to be funding for the tourism due to cuts. I wondered whether we had information on. Councillor actually touched upon a couple of one aspect earlier on in terms of the Brecon and Monmouthshire Canal and the work that's been done there in terms of regenerating the canal to attract more tourism into the area. Well, you'll see where I'm going with this in a minute. Obviously, it's opportunities for young people to gain skills to get into employment, but I wondered whether we had any further information on the percentage of people in Torfaen who work in the leisure and tourism sector, and whether there was any additional revenue streams that might be available, possibly from Welsh Government.
With regards to the Modern Brec Canal, it's obviously subject to the prioritisation of regeneration projects as we go forward. There is a Visit Wales funding bid that will come forward for work on the canal, which is around the Pontymoyle Basin and down to the south to, is it whatever locks, I can't remember the numbers, 5 locks. So there's work around that. We will still be working in partnership with MBACT, but as I say, it will be subject to prioritisation of projects. And that's where the canal is. The Visit Wales programme, I believe, is around about 2.5 million for that work. My understanding is the funding is imminent, and as part of that, there will be a project manager and a project technical assistant as part of the bid to actually work on the canal. So that's where the canal is going. There are some volunteer opportunities around that bid. So there will be some work going on that. Whether it will be to the same extent of the Waterworks project, I don't know, is the honest answer. But we can find out as parcel of the recommendations when we leave the meeting. So that's the future of the canal. It's still a great asset for the borough to have, and there's still lots of potential. With regards to the tourism, that wasn't a departmental decision. And I can't say anything more than that, really.
If I can just add to that obviously you asked about young people and opportunities. Well, yes, in the same way that other interventions with the canal we have taken advantage of to try and get, whether it's young people or whether it's older people on their employment journey, actually who are interested in participating, either in the volunteering from a point of view of their own well-being and actually avoiding social isolation, which can lead then to them seeking employment opportunities, but also for some people who are directly knowing they want to work in that area. So yes, we will be working very closely with, hopefully, when that funding stream comes on, to maximise those opportunities.
Thank you, Chair. Supplementary to that, I focused the first part of the question on the canal because I was aware that there had been European funding that had been allocated. But the broader context, obviously, we've got a lot in the north of the borough, up in Blaenavon, with it being recognised as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and we've got a big pit, and what's happening with regards to, funding to promote tourism in those areas.
And certainly I'll have to focus you back to Dawson on tourism if it's part of his.
The Blaenavon World Heritage Site Partnership will continue to exist. There is a marketing group as part of that will continue to exist, and all the promotional activities will be focused through those groups. Actual general tourism, Torfaen won't be promoted.
I'm very clear about the certain thing I'm on with the canal, that it's actually, and the way it's been promoted, that it's actually employment and volunteering hub, and the tourism bit, as you said, we can't do anywhere near. But in terms of a lot of opportunity for what we're talking about now has been a major focus, certainly of MMAT and people like that, and making sure that we can use it. And I'm glad to hear you say what you said, thankfully, because that, if that comes to pass, and it's not what it was before, but it's certainly still a lot of opportunity there, and support, hopefully, from the council.
I fully agree, but I will, for the sake of sounding like a parrot, I will say it's subject to regeneration priorities.
Put the mic on. I think that concludes our questions, right? I'd like to thank the officers for their time and patience with us today. You can now leave the meeting, and what members will now do is... sorry, David, do you want...
Just a comment, really. It's going back to what I said about companies in Bristol wanting to come over the Torfaen. There is actually 3 businesses that I know that want to come from Bristol to Torfaen. So I just wanted to put it out there that there are businesses that, and one in Swindon actually, that are looking at Torfaen as soon as that bridge toll comes away. So they may already have contacted you, I don't know, but if they haven't, just wanting to make sure that people were aware that there are businesses looking to come to Torfaen.
There are inward investment projects that we're working with. We are reactive to the marketing we put out there. So if you are aware of something, if you give me the details, then I will make sure that we will be in contact with them and meet them very shortly.
So we can pick that up in our conversation on apprenticeships as well.
Yeah, I suggest there's a conversation to be had here. Okay, just to repeat, thank you very much for your assistance today. Thanks. In terms of the committee now, can we continue, or do you want a 5-minute comfort break? We'll have a normal 5-minute comfort break then. Is that okay? Okay, we'll resume the meeting now, and we're at the part of the meeting now where we've had the discussions with officers, and we're going to consider what recommendations we're going to come up with. Can I ask you all to turn to page 43 of the report, please? I won't read this out, but 12.1 sets out what we were asked to scrutinise in terms of today's line of questioning. So I just want you to bear that in mind when we come up with formulating our recommendations. I think what I'll do now is, as I usually do, I've made a few little notes about possible questions, but I know Kath and Rachel are copiously making notes. So, Kath, do you want to enlighten us as to what you thought were some of the key questions that were coming out, and then we can add to that and decide what we want to put forward?
Okay. Very early in the meeting, there were the issues around the strategy that's been in place since 2013. Although it was commented upon that it is a 7-year plan and isn't due to end until 2020, both officers at the table agreed that it needed a refresh, not necessarily a replace, as there's only sort of 2 years to go, but at least refresh it to take on board some of the big changes that have taken place since it was written. So I don't know if there's something around that you want to discuss as a recommendation?
I also had that down, a new strategic policy to be put in place, and I put a big yes against that. I thought that was, I think that is certainly something we should be recommending. It came out today. Yeah, are we happy with that?
Yeah.
Alan?
Yeah, I think, Chair, actually, rather than just think of it, we should develop a new strategy, because so many things have changed since that one was first of all developed and then put into practice, and particularly around funding and all the changes that have been around there, changes in personnel, changes in the economy as well. There's so much around there that I think it's difficult to give a lower number of people with less money to tell them to deliver that one. So I think it needs development of a new strategy.
I agree. I agree, and I've written new strategy in my notes, Kath. So that's the.
Yes, Chair, I very much support that. You know, that's why I brought it up. I thought it was out of date because there's obviously been so much happened within the last 5 years. But of course, the other major big thing that's happened externally, of course, is Brexit. And I don't think that they've really looked enough at the implications of Brexit and post-Brexit, particularly as the third option is dealing with funding complexities. One of the officers, I forget her name, touched upon the fact that there might be Wales funding available, you know, post-Brexit, and that needs to be taken into account in the future strategies as well.
Dave?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I totally agree with Alan and Hugh on this. Dawson did indicate that they were going to look at changing it within the next 12 months anyway, so I think that we should be looking at it a little bit sooner. Our recommendation should be that we look at the new strategy sooner than that, really.
Okay, great. Stuart?
Yeah, I'm also going to complicate matters even further. Also in the light of well-being of future generations, which he's sort of moaned a bit about, but I don't, that's his problem, not mine, and PSB as well, because there are positives in this. With positives, I noticed Karen coming up with new ways of working because she's been grafted into the department, and she's always good on stuff like that, is Karen. And the well-being of future generations, it's got a big impact on it. And negatives might be Brexit, I suspect, or positives, depending on how you look at it. I'm not going to comment on that. But the well-being of future generations is to my mind, a positive in it. Yeah.
I think, Stuart, in terms of... Can you turn your mic off, saying?
Sorry.
In terms of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, now, any new policy that the Council come up with, it has to go through that Wellbeing of Future Generations template. So it's a given that they have to take that into account.
But PSB, we found when we did scrutiny on it, didn't we?
No, I agree. But I mean, I think we can put something in the notes about the Wellbeing Act, but they'll definitely have to deal with that. So I think the consensus is that we go for a new strategy. But Stuart?
Sorry, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I just want to support, as my colleagues have pointed out, rather than updating the policy at this stage, I think it's better to do the old document at this stage.
We've got a clear agreement on that. Okay. Next item.
Sorry. Just one final point, and I did mention this earlier. I don't know whether Kath wants to come back to it, but it does. I feel it forms an important part of the new strategy. Is this thing about millennials? Because millennials have got to have transferable skill sets to get them to be able to go from one employer to another, and how we embody that within the strategy, because it's going to present itself as a very significant change going forwards from a generational perspective.
Can I suggest that we draft something around the skills and employability bit, cross-referencing it back in a minute?
That's why I did the well-being of future generation. It wasn't just about what the council did, it was about who our target audience. There was the economic aspect, which is what you asked the question on. It was what that future generation was. And thanks for bringing that in there, Hugh, because that's important.
Can we, Kath, go back now to your list, please?
Okay. Okay. The next item that I indicated as a possible recommendation was around procurement. Dawson brought it up, a number of you did, about the work that they're planning to do with Andrew Macy, about it's not easy to engage with small local businesses, but more needs to be done to do that. So I don't know how you want to word that, but I indicated it.
I also had a note that more we can do. I had question mark and procurement question mark, so those two issues are certainly coming up. So yes, I would suggest we need a question around that.
Could I also reference that back to the bit of scrutiny we did a few years back, because that was betting the wire mine on that.
There was certainly something around procurement we want to say. And there was talk about, with the procurement, it was about the model he was talking about. They want to look at the model rather than what's been implemented, so we need to tease something out on that. And the more we can do, is that around the promotion to new businesses and apprenticeships?
Yeah.
Kath, was that? We all know so much more.
It came as a result of talking about the business forum, where it said it looked at skills and procurement with businesses and offering pre-employment courses as and when they know that certain businesses are coming into the area or expanding. So that's when they said they started to look at procurement.
Tease this out a little bit more. What are we going to actually say about procurement then?
What it was about was acting as a driver for local businesses, setting them up, giving them opportunities, and it was that stuff.
So is the question then something about how can we improve procurement practice locally to encourage new business in the area? Is that what we're saying? I don't know. Alan, did you want to come in now and help us out?
I was just thinking on that, whether can we change the model in relation to procurement to ensure easier access for local business?
That'd be fair.
Yeah. Good. Thank you, Alan. All right, Kath. That's great. A team spirit is always the best way forward. Kath, jot that down and then possible next. I don't think we're going to have a huge amount of questions today, if I'm honest, but if we have 4 or 5 decent ones, that's fine. Stuart?
Yeah, I picked up the point there was a bit of negativity about selling ourselves to people that may want to come over the bridge. I think we could do a bit more in that regard, because it didn't come across very good to me.
I think there was more than one occasion when we chatted about unique selling point that it didn't sound that unique or positive. There is. Hugh, do you want to come in?
Yeah. I think Alan persisted with this point because they didn't give a fully comprehensive answer. When pushed, it finally emerged. One glaringly obvious unique selling point we've got in Torvine, which was not in the report, which Dawson said in the end, was that companies that relocate here currently have got access to Tier 1 funding. Yeah. And that was not in the report as a selling point for Torvine. So we need to do far more to stress to these businesses that are potentially considering to relocate to Torvine what the funding opportunities are here and how much better they are.
Can I suggest that we couch this in the language that the committee, that more needs to be done to promote our unique selling point of Torvine, and, positively promote, and that, I'm not sure how we'll word this, but certainly there more needs to be done around funding opportunities, particularly Tier 1. Alan? Hang on.
Can I say, Chair, my one worry was that we would just focus on Bristol and the Cardiff City regional deals. So there's loads of people out there. There's no one in Swindon, for instance, from there. And we actually just don't put all our focus and all our eggs into that particular, 2 baskets.
Well, we'll have 2 questions. We'll have 2 recommendations here. One about unique selling point and tier 1 funding, and then another recommendation that in terms of the selling, it needs to be much wider than just Cardiff and Bristol.
I brought the point back. It might be in the report, but accessibility in terms of where you can go from here, which has to be re-emphasised really. And accessibility, communications, all those things need to be reiterated. Let's do the plus, not the negatives.
Dave and then Alan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure whether we've finished up on this one, but I wanted to try and put something down, a recommendation towards small businesses that Torvine needs to, do more than what they're doing. He did say, and I know it comes down to funding, but he did say that, when they had the grants, they were getting a lot more response with small businesses. And he also did mention that when they were rate relief or rent relief, that was something that was also a big selling point for small businesses. Back in the day, we need to try and work something out on that, and even to come back there. I know we come back to the same. It's funding and all the rest, but we need to try and work out something on that for small businesses. It's important that we have small businesses within the borough.
You made the point during the committee that as a small business yourself, very little come your way. Yeah. Okay, we'll need to pick something up on that, but will that be covered under the unique selling point bit, or do we need a separate one? Yeah, a separate one on the small business. Alan, you wanted to come in next, then Stuart.
Yes, Chair. There's a lack of clarity, actually. I haven't actually put this into a question yet, but I'm still unclear in terms of the type of train that we carry out across. It's either 7 or 6. I think one is going into another, and there's probably 6 different streams of training without outside training. It's just Torvine types of training. And what the skills audit is, because we haven't seen the skills audit. If we train all these, are we training them in the right skills and push them to the right areas for now and the future? You can't ignore now, people need jobs now, but for future jobs as well. And I'm just wondering whether they can show us more clearly the link between training and the actual need that's there in terms of skills audit, because they haven't shown us that. So, we spend a lot of money in that area. We just talk about lack of money. Is that money being spent in the right way, and is it actually effective?
That's right, yeah. Is it being spent in the right way?
Okay. I don't know how we're going to put that into a question, Kath. Hang on. Let Kath just drop this down. We'll try and work this into a question, Alan, with help from everyone.
What I was going to say on that was, because I looked at that, and they seem to have all these programmes. They're answering funding programmes, not training needs, aren't they? Sorry to say it, if we had a much more cohesive programme, one or two programmes answering the training need, that would make more sense. Because it seems every funding stream they've got a programme with a fancy name, whereas really all they need is a training programme for people in certain categories. And it does seem to me they've gone overboard with that. They always did do that.
Yeah, right, Kath,
making a
can
comment.
you turn your mics off a sec? Kath,
Yeah.
what have you got down now on that one? Just trying to help Kath out here.
All I've written is, how do we know that the training that we're provided is linking to jobs?
Exactly.
Is there a skills audit to ensure we're training in the right areas? But I don't know if that's a recommendation or more a question. So can we...
The link between skills audit Can you demonstrate the link between the skills audit and the training actually carried out?
Yeah, let's leave it like. Do it.
Thank you, Chair. I was a bit concerned about, and I know the decision's been made prior, about the small business grants, because that's had a huge effect on small businesses. Alongside the loss of a community development officer, and other officers in the department are struggling to cope with the work that's in front of them. I don't know if we can wrap this up into 3 categories there.
Can you just repeat the 3 categories, and we'll try and turn this into a question?
Yes, Chair. They're concerned about these small business grants no longer available. And we know the decision's been made prior to that. I'm concerned about the overall officers that are able to carry out the work, especially the community development officer is no longer in place anyway, and the impact that has.
Are we going to turn this into a recommendation? Are we going to ask for...
Concern rather than recommendation.
Well,
Comment at the end.
that would go as a comment then, Stuart, at the back. We'll put
there needs to be, there needs to be a new strategy, I think. On the way Torvine are looking at small businesses.
Well, I think if we, in terms of the comment, if we make the comment on those 3 strands Stuart has said, and we'll also, in the comments, we'll put something in about the new strategy has to look at the small business. We're asking for a new strategy, and in the comments we're trying to give them some pointers.
Well, the pointers are the grants, rates relief, rent relief.
I think the only way we will play that though is in the comments rather than...
Well, yeah, that's what I mean, yeah.
Yeah. It's all right, Kath, we'll put them in the comments.
Thank you, Chair. In the recommendations, and I take on board what all the other members of the committee have been saying, and the report has so far sort of, I suppose, rightly focused on the big ticket items like, Cardiff City Regional Deal and the hospital and all the rest of it. But for me, there's a glaring omission in this report because under the recommendation 1, it's got partnership working between economic development and employability services to support the overall economy of Torfaen. And they include the word overall. Well, the glaring omission from this report, as I pointed out earlier in the committee, is the fact we've got 9 rural wards within this borough, and there's nothing in there that deals with agriculture, the rural aspects to the wards. We're all focusing on digitisation and everything, and there's a
who we're definitely going to pick
omission.
We'll definitely pick some out on that. I think that came towards the back end of the meeting, so I'm sure Kath's going to get to that, and we'll...
Okay, I know it came out towards the back end of the meeting, but you've got it under recommendation 1. So where it's got the overall economy of Torfaen, the report is not fully inclusive.
Let's deal with... Let's deal with this rural issue now. Kath, can you just go to your notes on that? I think it's... and we'll try and word a question that who is happy with.
Because I picked up something there and separate from mine.
Yeah, let's deal with this point first, because we want to get...
It's the same thing.
Oh, go on then.
Because Hugh's talking about farming, which is fair enough. We're also talking about the other side of it, which was land banking, which Dawson admittedly didn't know anything about. But there is, if you would advertise, 100 acres of land out there for things, you would get a lot of people after it. Because we always ask questions about this. Can I have a bit of land to do something with? And people... So, now, can I just make the distinction? Because there is a distinction between skills and business support and the skills and business support side of it, right? What Hugh brought up, I thought very eloquently there, was the whole business about farmers and the succession. That's a very serious thing. And you said 9 wards, and there's a lot. Yeah, that's one aspect to that. The other aspect of it is people wanting to do rural activities other than farming, like horticulture, like various things involve land. Now that is an issue, another separate issue. That's 2 separate issues.
Yeah. Well, they'll have to be dealt with as 2 issues.
Yeah,
but let's pick... I want to nail down Hugh's recommendation first, and then we'll deal with that, the land banking. So, I'm just seeing what Kath has got down that'll help us.
I think Councillor Bevans covered it really. I've written down his concerns about there being 9 rural wards and a number of... we've currently got an active farming community, but many of them are nearing retirement, and reluctance from families to keep the farms going being a significant issue. More needs to be done to encourage agricultural developments, and then taking on board what Councillor Ashley's just said, also taking into account succession planning. It's not just the fact that they need to do more to do it, but to deal with the issues that are already there and come into the forefront. So that's what I've got down.
Yes, I am. Thanks, Chair. And again, it kind of ties in this issue with the millennials again, because it's the younger generation are more tech savvy, they're more mobile, so they're prepared to get on their bikes and travel longer distances to get a job further away. They don't necessarily want to continue in the family farm, and it might have been in the same family for generations, but the millennials don't necessarily want to continue in that way because they're seeing bigger and more attractive opportunities elsewhere. But yes, I mean, I think you captured most of it. The whole rural aspect has not been really thoroughly considered, and the point that Stuart makes as well, I know he's going off on not a tangent,
No,
but it's
not at
kind
all,
of
no.
it's linked to it in terms of the land use, especially post Brexit, where we might see a significant increase in value of in the prices of vegetables. I think there could be farm
as well.
and animal livestock. There could potentially be a lot more demand within Torfaen for the agricultural sector and for homegrown produce.
What I'm going on about is we have some land that is available both privately and in council ownership, public ownership, and availability of some of that land for small scale agricultural, small scale horticultural, and developing small businesses, whether they be.
We'll put a question in about that.
Yeah.
No more wants to come in.
It's the same point, really.
Yeah.
Cooperatives,
Yeah,
could be encouraged. Do you know what I mean? If the land's available, perhaps people would come forward to form cooperatives on this agricultural land, or on the animal side, either side.
If we couch the question in, what more can be done to encourage cooperatives and others in terms around availability of land? Yeah. Okay. No, if we use the term cooperatives and others should pick up a wide spectrum. Who?
Well, one example of that, Chair, would be a cooperative of farmers getting together to have their abattoir, so they could get the meat dealt with locally instead of having to transport it considerable distances. But that's just one example.
You've got a project in Bristol, right, which is actually right in the centre of Bristol on former brownfield land, where they've actually got 8 or 9 huge polytunnels in the centre of Bristol.
No, I think we've got those 2 points. Kath, can you have another look? What is it? Sorry, Stuart.
Thank you, Chair. And I picked up as well about this Springboard 2. I think that's something that needs to be progressed as best we can, because that is a much valued service is needed.
The other one about that is actually, and it's the one, Dave, I think we had down in Cwmbran at the studio place, where we lost that. It's not just Springboard, it's about availability of units of any type. Springboard's beautiful, but it's the shared resource, and the space we need it, and appropriate sizes for enterprises.
Right, I'm picking it up. Can I just go back to Kath? Did we have anything in the notes, Kath, that will help us with this?
No, it was a set answer from Dawson that if the Valleys Task Force doesn't go ahead, then they wouldn't be able to afford it. In 2014, when we looked at it in Cleaner, when Councillor Parish was chair, it was being discussed then, and everyone agreed the vital work that it does, but also the huge amount of money that it costs to keep it running, and that without support and funding, nothing could be done. So you could put something in around the fact that, you support the fact that the Valleys Task Force is working towards supporting a second Springboard, and hope that they prioritise it because the need is great, or something along those lines.
Can we do that? You happy with that, no?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
But can we also alongside that, put in the fact that we need the shared space, the other type place. They don't necessarily have to be provided by us.
What did Dawson say about...
and what's that other...
Alan was asking him questions. He'd done some chunks of work around availability of things.
Yes, which is on the website.
Yeah.
So we don't need to ask a question about that, do we?
No, they're on the website, private and Torfaen.
Yeah, so we've got some...
We do need to make the point that it's important these spaces are available.
Sorry, that was the point. Sorry, Chair, that was the point he made. That all the available space in Torfaen, private and public, is published on the website. There's available space.
That's not the point I'm making. Point he did make was that when this studio space or small industrial units come up, they go like that, like hotcakes.
Yeah, that's the point I was going to make. They know they need the smaller units, and they haven't got any.
Yeah.
But there are units throughout Torfaen that are empty. Could they look at those? And if they are large, Could they divide them up?
Exactly.
Do you know,
So
things like
can
that?
we couch the question around what more can be done to publicise empty units around the whole borough and reconfiguring them if necessary? Isn't that the
They
question?
know the need. They
Because
know
we've got
the need
as
as
Alan's
well,
pointed out, the information is there, and it's again back to we haven't got enough officers. There's not enough promotion going on. So if we couch the question in that language,
I know we haven't got nothing for Brown. Totally, they got, for, which he couldn't answer for other reasons, we don't have enough units in Cwmbran.
so what you're suggesting there, we ask
The
them to-
small stuff.
You want them to... Sorry. A minute. Kath?
Could we say something along the lines of promote to residents and businesses the website that is available that shows that there are lists of land that's available? Because if people don't know that they've got a website, and on that website the following things are available to you, we can't ask them to promote it any more than they do because they've not got the funding. But if they don't know the website's in place,
I think so.
No, it's not.
All right, come on, Stuart. What are you...
What I'm saying is we've got a lack of suitable premises in certain parts of the borough, namely Cwmbran, and it's not the big stuff. It's all these little places where you do your little offices and your little metal bashing things. Cwmbran's absolutely bereft of it. And it's not.
Is it realistic of us to suggest then? I mean, they should make... I mean, they're not going to... There's going to be no money to make any new units available, Stuart.
It doesn't matter whether we do it or we get private enterprise.
So what
Your
we...
suggestion's a really good one, actually.
Which was...
I need to...
Yeah, we can divide up the larger
Well, that's
units
what I was saying
that
about
they can't.
promoting what space is there. Sorry, Norma, and then
I mean, they can say, right, they're in the wrong place. Torvine isn't that large a borough, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, there are empty units out at Mamila. They've been empty. You know, there's office blocks there as well for years. I mean, you know, they could reconfigure those in some way.
I think we're going to couch the question then in terms of promotion what's there and reconfiguring.
Yes.
Okay.
I did want to come in on a separate point, but I think on that it's and brownfield sites in terms of what they're talking about usage of existing land bank assets. But anyway, Chair, I wanted to come in on a completely separate point, if I may, please, with regards to the Llanfrectha Grange Hospital and the Medipark. There were a couple of things that really stood out. One was how crucial the working is going to be with the universities to get the university training aspect to proceed. And the other thing that really stood out was the fact that it's going to be a mix of public and private funding to get the Medipark R&D side of it set up. And there needs to be a lot more work done going forwards to procure that private funding.
I think this is only a thought that's come to me now. In terms of the HE involvement in that, they've made a big play that the Medipark is one of the major priorities that they're going to deal with. Now, to my mind, the one place where the HE are not represented is on the public service boards.
That's right.
No, and if we could put a recommendation about getting them involved on the public service, because around that table you've particularly got the local authority, you've got the health, the statutory people. If they, over the next 2 years, they're going to be constantly discussing this Medipark at that sort of partnership level. So I put something in around that to cover that point. No, I mean, we've scrutinised the Public Service Board, the chairs, and there's certainly no... I worry about the H&E involvement. That's why I've asked the question more than once. Yeah, and the second point, who now? You have to remind me of that.
The mix of funding sources, public versus private.
Yeah, so how would we couch a question around that? We'll ask them how are they going to utilise, is it?
I think, based on your experience and what you've said about Cambridge and the R&D that's gone on there, that's been goes really on the reputation of the university, I think we're likely to see, unless we can get stuff that's affiliated through Cardiff or Swansea University, I think we're going to be reliant more upon small SMEs, in the private sector, and how are we going to attract those to come into Torfaen to set up a base here for R&D. I know we'll have the hospital. I know it'll be critical care, but we need what you said about the training and the educational things to be in place. That's a prerequisite for the R&D bit to come. If we don't get the educational and training bit in place, we won't get the R&D bit.
My worry is with this is, if I'm really honest, what I don't want the Medipack to turn into, and it could do if we're not careful, if they don't get the right engagement with the HE set early on, it could turn into a supply depot for the hospital, and that's my concern. That's my concern, and I mean I did question Rachel Jowett about this in council, and she gave very reassuring answers about we're engaging with, but if we can get the HE sector sat around the table when they're drawing up these development plans, this is going to be one of the big planks of that. And it affects not just the council, it affects an Iron Heaven Health Board. And if you want R&D, the third big partner has to be, it's probably going to be Cardiff and Swansea, And the science parks that work in Great Britain are clustered around the big red brick universities, right? Cambridge is a classic. Yeah, or they'll also be around the science councils. Swindon is another area, But so we certainly need something in there about. And I think if we, ask them if they get the H&C around I'd have them as part of their public service board over the next few years.
And Iron Bevan is actually a university health board now. Yeah. So they do promote a lot of teaching with the University of South Wales, because Cardiff and Glamorgan have sort of come together to teach life sciences. Good. So an Iron Bevan needs to be.
Oh no, they're a key partner of the public service. Yeah. But if you're going to do pure R&D, the universities as well.
We need them on board.
I'm not an expert, but if they're doing clinical research into how they're going to tackle, we had a presentation on the MND the other day. If there could be research being done on that, but you need your clinicians, but you also need your academics for that to work. So we're going to have a recommendation around that. Ask Kath anything else we need, Alan?
Yes, Chair. I think it's about time they developed a new suite of measures in terms of measuring our success with jobs growth in the borough. I think the measures we have currently are totally inadequate. I mentioned one that they could have used earlier on today in terms of jobs density, which shows how poorly off we are against other authorities and how we are going back whilst others are going forward. That's just one measure. I think there are a number of measures you can have about the success of businesses and jobs growth. So we can really measure what we do. As we said, we talk about money being cut, jobs being cut, changes being made, and we got this. But what is being delivered, and what is the effects of that? Because if we could see that, we might have made a decision, or the council, sorry, not we, might have made a decision not to decrease 135k from that area this time. We might think it was worth investing in because we can grow jobs. But if you don't know,
exactly.
How do you make the decision? So my question is, can they develop a stronger suite of measures in relation to success in this area?
No, that's just, I think, is a unanimous decision. That's a definite yes.
There as well, because we did ask the questions about people with mental illness, etc., in there, because that. Now we've got Karen in there doing her employability bit. I think we need those measures in there as well. That then goes alongside the biggest problems we've got in this borough, and we're number 2 to Blaenau Gwent on this one.
That would come under disability.
Yeah, can we pick that up? We'll ask the question Alan has raised, and we'll put in the comments that any measures should include, to pick up your point.
No, I thought Karen was really positive on this. And what I wanted, other recommendation, she talked about packages. I like that idea. Recommendation, we support her on those packages. It's packages for employers that come in. You know, the positive stuff she was talking about, she's always been good on that, by the way. I used to work with her in Rise. But the packages to get people in with new employers, that stuff, we'd like to see a bit more on that, maybe.
So the question, I'll come to you now in a minute. The question is there, what more can be done to encourage packages for, what are we...
New employers for new employers, and then also the other stuff that she talked about, which was getting people back in, you know, she talked about...
Well, we're not going to ask, sorry, we shouldn't be saying what more.
Yeah,
we've got to put it in terms of what's the recommendation we're putting in here? Sorry, it's not a question. That's not.
There was a lot of stuff she was talking about there, which I was trying to capture. I didn't know whether you caught it or not.
I'm trying to look, and I remember, but I haven't got anything.
It was really good stuff too, and I just wanted to re-emphasise that because it was very positive stuff about work. There was some really good stuff about working with people, getting them into volunteering and all that stuff. Which
so are we saying then more? The recommendation of the committee is more should be done to encourage packages of support for people seeking employment.
Yeah, and volunteering and all round.
For packages of support for people seeking volunteering opportunities and employment.
It's part of our council aim to support vulnerable people, and I think she's doing that. And certainly getting them in, you know, involved in getting.
Got a point there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was coming back to the point Alan made. And in terms of the data, it's not just numbers in terms of employability, but we need information to be able to undertake a sector analysis as well.
Yeah.
So it's all well and good saying, you know, how much money is being spent on one particular area, but what we should really have is some research undertaken to show what the breakdown of employment by sector is within Torfaen. And again, this comes back to, are we spending the money on the right areas? And get more focused delivery then.
Alan?
Yeah, sorry, Chair, I didn't want to be prescriptive on what they needed to measure, but just to take Councillor Bevan's point, that information by sector is already available on the NOMIS site.
And we just stick to the Alan's generic question. Is that okay, Hugh? The NOMIS site is... remind me what NOMIS is.
The NOMIS site is the one that they use for their stats now, that's used within the paper, and it splits it down. So I know, for instance, in the last 5 years, Torfaen have cut 290 full-time jobs from the council.
Yeah.
So it does do it by sector on there. But I mean, you know, it's for them to come back, I think, when they develop it, to say we put these measures in, and then maybe for the committee to say, no, we'd like to look at this, just to take Hugh's point, because it is an important one in terms of sector growth or decline.
Can we cover it by...
I think there's something in there, perhaps I didn't know that.
Can we put something in the comment here that they should cover the NOMIS, what's available on NOMIS in the next report or something? So
yeah, could we have more information then on sector growth and decline
in future? I mean,
in future reports.
Yeah, we'll put that under the comments, if that's okay.
Because I do feel that if we have more information on sector, we would know. Because, you know, there's a lot, everyone's saying, oh, we should perhaps put all the money on digital economy. But that may not necessarily be the right way to go. Unless we can see huge sector growth in that area.
Alan said this available on NOMIS. I think we'll just reflect in the comments that we'd like to see more of the sector breakdown in any future papers they produce.
But it goes beyond just the provision of that information. Is that information being used to influence the allocation of resources and funding? you see where I'm going with this? It's not just getting that information, it's are we targeting the resources in the right places?
So, without stipulating specifics, as Alan has said, what I've put about the new suite of measures, a new suite of measures required to measure our success of business and job growth, to be able to measure the effect of the work being done, to ensure we're targeting the right businesses. Would that not include it? Unless I don't know if it. I don't know how to express
Should we say
it
right
differently.
business sectors?
So, measure the success of businesses, job growth and business sectors to be able to measure the effect of the work being done. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, Chair, it's for them to develop the measures and then they'll look to say, are they fit for purpose or not? Do we want this
Okay.
when they come back?
Have we got anything else?
Well, volunteering thing. Are we talking about when we talk about the canal and the World Heritage and all the rest of them? A lot of them have measured outcomes of people that went on volunteering. So in fact, there's quite a lot of work being done about who went on them, what outcomes they had. Certainly, and along with that, some had disabilities and things that could be measured. So there's quite a lot of work done in there about what their outcomes were. So that's a lot of useful work in there.
Yeah. So what we're not trying to put out recommendations to it.
No, that was the recommendation of the volunteering,
Yeah.
and some of the schemes that looked like they were doing things like improving canals and that were also.
So you're not suggesting we change that, though?
No, not at all. I'm
That's
just
fine.
giving examples.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
The recommendations, because I'd like to wrap this meeting up now, if possible.
I think that's quite a good time.
I don't know,
Norma?
Chairman, the hydro project, we've got a lot of rivers and fast-flowing rivers. Could we say we'd like to see more of those coming? Or isn't it possible? Do you know what I mean?
I'm not sure that would fit into this sort of, if I'm honest, I don't really see that fitting into the scope of this inquiry today.
They did mention the hydro scheme possibly at the British as well, didn't they? Just in comment, it's good to see that they're looking at hydro systems and green systems.
We can put a little. We can put a little comment in and not a recommendation, Laura, in the comments. We'd encourage the officers to look at hydro. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, there was one more.
Go on then.
And it relates to the last recommendation, really. And that's whether or not we can lobby Welsh Government in relation to the funding complexities around developing industrial growth. Because there are so many different avenues of finance which are from Welsh Government. There's so many different grant schemes from Welsh Government. They change, and you've got Cardiff region. It adds an enormous amount of complexity, I think, for officers to be able to produce a strategy and develop a strategy. There's a lot of uncertainty around this. I mean, I said, I put a comment on the top of this, that is, what we have in front of us is risks today and jam tomorrow in terms of the report, and that's not a reflection of the officers, that's a reflection of where we are. Lots of things are in front of us and we don't know what they will mean. There are a number of things that become, I just think it's a very complex stream to look at.
So the recommendation there, if I'm reading you correctly, is we'd recommend the Council lobby the Welsh Government to reduce the complexity of industrial grant schemes.
Around funding.
Around funding.
Yeah.
Kath, you got that?
Recommend the Council lobby Welsh Government.
About the complexities of industrial...
Industrial development.
Yeah.
The only thing that worries me about that is at the moment they're fairly skilled at knowing where they are. And we've got the whole Brexit thing happening, whether that's going to be an advantage or a disadvantage. We lack of European money.
I don't think we'll go there.
No, I don't think we ought to.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. If I could just come back to the thing about the hydro and the green. Alan just touched on complexities of grant funding and stuff. I think we could do more on this, and I don't know if we can embody it rather than just as a comment, but rather than as a recommendation. If we can do some more collaborative working with Monmouthshire, because I know Monmouthshire have done a lot on green and solar, and whether they've done as much on hydro, I'm not sure, but I know they've certainly done more on solar. But there is actually limited funding available at the moment through the RLAG from Welsh Government for solar projects at the moment, solar PV projects at the moment. And I know the hydro scheme in Blaenavon is one thing that's being considered. I think they're preparing a bid to secure funding. And I do feel if we've got a general objective in the borough of being cleaner and greener, we've focused on the cleaner, we haven't really focused on the greener bit. And other than the recycling, which I take out, which is a big success story, but there's a lot more we can do to be greener. And I think, yes, there is something we can put in there, especially as it was specifically mentioned in the report as a plan for the British. And perhaps that is something that would require a new skill set as well in the borough and offer opportunities for younger people to go into that area. I mean, there must be scope for wind turbines up in the north of the borough. I mean, the wind we get up there must be sites. So.
Yeah, it's good stuff here. I'm just trying to, from Kath's perspective, we need to hone this down into a 1 or 2 line recommendation. So what are we going to say? Rather, it's going to be short and we need.
Can they?
It's not a question. It's going to be a recommendation.
Well, we recommend then that they do some more collaboration work with neighbouring authorities for promoting greater usage of green technologies such as hydro, solar PV, and wind.
Yeah. Okay.
That would do.
All right, and I'll pick up your point then, Norma. And it'll even touch on potential future use of the British do it. Yes. So, Emma?
Thank you. They talked about the north of Torfaen and the south. When we were talking about the strategic hub, can we put some sort of recommendation in about public transport links between the north and the south, if that's where the strategic hub is going to be?
Yeah.
I don't know what the teams that have been around the table can do about public transport. They've talked in the Cardiff City region that there's going to be the metro and everything, but they're here to sort of, I know where you're coming from, but I don't think we could recommend that they could do anything about improving the infrastructure. That's part of what's going to go on with the city deal, I think.
Stuart?
Just going to comment about the transport links. And the only links that we are likely to see is improved transport bus services. Unfortunately, we're not able to see a line put into the north of the borough. No. So unfortunately, I don't think that's a goer.
Okay. What will happen now is obviously Kath will refine our recommendations. They will come out to you all to have a look at before they're submitted. So if anyone feels they're not being picked up properly, Kath will give us all the opportunity to comment on them. I'll close the meeting by reminding members that this is the last meeting before the annual general meeting of the council. But the officers, so the committee could change, you might have a new chair, we don't know. But officers will be working on adding dates to the corporate diary for revisioning in the next week or so it will be sometime in June or July. And on a personal note, as I've been chair for this year, I'd like to thank you all for your support during the year. I've been very grateful. My last comment is, as usual, I thank Rachel and Kath for all their hard work, because the work that goes on behind the scenes we don't understand. They really do well. So I'm going to close the meeting to the press and the public now. Thank you all.